Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Picture This, a marathon of Oscars past. We have finally stopped at the year 1987, but it is the year 2026 when you're hearing this, and I'm on a boat. Chad and I beforehand, Chad was like, should we bring up the fact you're on a boat? Like, I'm on a boat. I'm in the same cabin I was last time, so if you're seeing this background, this is going to be the background for a lot of the episodes coming throughout the rest of the year. But Chad, how you doing, man? Good to see you. How you feeling?
Doing great. How does it feel to be back in the swing of things on
It
your
feels
boat?
great. It feels great, yeah. And I'm excited to just be able to keep this as a constant to kind of keep me grounded and give me something to watch here and give me something to look forward to and give me something
Yeah,
to have a little bit of order and process and creativity and stuff amongst the other creative amazing things I'm doing. But this is more fun than it is job. But it is still something I treat like a job. I know you treat like a job, and we do love it so much. But Chad, we've made it to 1987. This is part of our wish list series, and this was my pick. I picked a year that had a lot of movies that I thought spoke to me, and I guess my culture, my family, my heritage, but also some movies that I hadn't seen that I wanted to check off the list. Some movies that I heard were great from directors I didn't love, but now I love, and just a great variety. I know I was telling you off air. I was like, this slate has so many comedies, and rarely do we get more comedies than dramas. So it's just also a
right.
very light slate. It's a fun slate. I don't think there's any movies in this slate, even the ones that deal with like war and big societal changes and norms and stuff. I don't think any of them are super heavy to the point where it's like a tough watch. And the heaviest one, I would say, the darkest one, is an erotic thriller. So it's still thrilling in a lot of senses. So I
Right.
think we have a good slate ahead of us. I'll just say the titles, and then Chad, you can give us your thoughts on the slate in general. But the films we're going to be covering for 1987 are Broadcast News, Fatal Attraction, Hope and Glory, The Last Emperor, and Moonstruck. So there we go. Those are the five. And I genuinely don't know where this is going to go. I think this could go one of maybe four different ways, depending on if I'm reading Chad right, if I'm reading my own self right. I'm not sure. But Chad, what do you think of the slate in general? What do you think of this one?
I think it's good. I might not love it on the same like height as you, but I do think it. I do agree that it's very interesting. I mean, some of these films, like at least two of these films, have some really great overacting in it. Like you said, it's a comedy, so or a lot of these are comedies. So it's kind of interesting when you have best picture level movies that have things in it that you're like, this is great that a best picture level movie has this in it. And I think that's great. I thought maybe I might have like predicted your ranking, but now I'm actually not so sure. When you like behind the scenes were telling me kind of like not like which movies are where, but like which spots you were sure of. For me, I think it's I have a clear one and two,
Uh
and I'm
huh.
not sure which is which. They kind of flip flop. I think our discussions might help solidify that. And then I think my three, four, and five will kind of shift around a little bit as well, maybe depending on the discussion. But I do feel like it is one and two up here, two, three, and four,
Hmm.
like or three, four, and five down here.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Because
but
that's
all good, I would say. None
yeah,
are
yeah.
bad.
Yeah. I don't think there's a bad film in this slate, and the one that I like the least is just one that I don't think I'll rewatch as much, even though I think
Yeah.
what it's doing is so marvelous and really ambitious. But also, what you kind of said, like for me, like there's a definitive number one for me. There's one that just rises above the rest. But then numbers two and three are like with another watch or two could definitely be in that like masterpiece tier. And then four and five I really like and are really good for their genres and their styles, but it's just not quite best picture for me. But a really good year, and we'll get into the year now. But Chad, tell us about 1987 because there's also some great movies that didn't make the cut that I want to spotlight soon. But let's talk about the history first, get some births, deaths, albums out of the way, and then we'll get to some other movies from that year.
Absolutely. Here's the history. We have an Amtrak train traveling from Washington, D.C. to Boston crashes into another train where I live in Maryland. Maybe not exactly where I live, but it was also before I was born. So
Mhm.
I had nothing to do with it, I swear. The Unabomber bombs a computer store parking lot in a place we're both familiar with, Salt Lake City.
Mhm.
And again, neither of us were born, so don't look at us. The U.S. Supreme Court legalizes. Maybe I'll make that joke for everyone. The U.S. Supreme Court legalizes affirmative action in cases where organizations have discrimination in their hiring practices. This was back when the Supreme Court was actually a real Supreme Court doing justice. The first Starbucks outside of the U.S. opens in Vancouver. I didn't know that the Starbucks was that old, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The FDA approves the use of AZT to treat HIV and AIDS. The Disney CEO and French Prime Minister strike a deal to build what will become Disneyland Paris.
Yeah.
The Simpsons cartoon first airs as a series of shorts on the Tracy Ullman Show, and it's still going.
I was saying, very, very, very topical for today. Yeah.
And then we have the U.S. Supreme Court again tells Rotary clubs they cannot deny membership to women. Very progressive back then, I guess. The first ever Rugby World Cup takes place in both New Zealand and Australia. The U.S. Supreme Court says that creation science does not need to be taught in public schools just because evolution is being taught. Very interesting decision there. Ronald Reagan tells Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall. The dusky seaside sparrow becomes extinct. Canada introduces the loonie, a $1 coin. People begin diving down to the Titanic to salvage things, maybe a little bit before James Cameron would start doing that.
Yeah. I don't know. He might have been going right away. Who knows?
Probably. Apple introduces a precursor to the World Wide Web called HyperCard, and that's what we're using right now. So not HyperCard, but World Wide Web.
Yeah. Cool. Is that it for the history?
For the history, I can get into some births.
Yeah, absolutely. Take it away, Chad.
Right. So I have a few births, a lot of notable names. We have Michael B. Jordan, who just won Best Actor. Kendrick Lamar, one of my favorite artists. Tom Felton, Draco Malfoy himself. Zac Efron, Frank Ocean, Cynthia Erivo, Hilary Duff, Blake Lively, Evan Peters, Kesha, Wiz Khalifa, Brendan Urie, Rob Kardashian, Bow Wow, Ronda Rousey, Elliot Page, Kevin Jonas, Miles Teller, and Mara Wilson. Is Kevin the oldest, Jonas?
I don't know actually. I don't know my Jonas trivia too well, but I think they're all roughly around the same age. But yeah, I feel like Kevin gives the oldest brother energy for sure. Yeah, he's the funny one. He's the kind of like quieter, more responsible one.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, perfect. Any deaths?
Just a few deaths here. Yeah. We got Andy Warhol, Fred Astaire, Rita Hayworth, James Baldwin, Lee Marvin, Maria von Trapp, Sound of Music, we covered that. Liberace, Bob Fosse, Jackie Gleason, John Huston, Buddy Rich, Mervyn LeRoy. Wow. We covered some Bob Fosse movie.
Oh yeah, we did Lenny and Cabaret. Yeah. And we're gonna cover another one very soon.
Very soon.
Yeah. So Chad, tell us about some music coming out at the time in 1987. Yeah.
So I have just a few of these ones. So we have U2's the Joshua Tree. We have Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction.
Yes.
We have Michael Jackson's Bad. And then we have Sign of the Times by Prince, Strange Ways Here We Come by the Smiths, You're Living All Over Me by Dinosaur, Document by R.E.M., Music for the Masses by Depeche Mode, Sister by Sonic Youth, and Substance by New Order.
Wow, what a good lineup. Wow. Great. So that's the history. Those are the births, deaths, albums. Let's talk about some movies that didn't make the cut for 1987. Chad, as you can tell, my voice is still warming up today, so I'll let you start, Chad, with some notable 87 movies while I continue to suck on this lozenge, hoping to get a little bit more wetness in the throat to help get us through 3 hours of this. But Chad, tell us about some movies from 1987.
We'll see if it's going to be 3 hours.
Probably not.
But we have, for notable films, The Stepfather, Over the Top, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, The Quick and the Dead, Angel Heart, Lethal Weapon, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, Garbage Day, Creepshow 2, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Ernest Goes to Camp, Harry and the Hendersons, The Witches of Eastwick, Roxanne, Spaceballs, Adventures in Babysitting, Inner Space, The Brave Little Toaster, Full Metal Jacket, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, The Lost Boys, Masters of the Universe, the old one, The Monster Squad, Dirty Dancing, House 2, The Second Story, maybe one of the best titles ever, The Living Daylights, Hellraiser, Near Dark, underrated vampire movie. Check that out. Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, probably better than the original Prom Night. Slumber Party Massacre 2, Prince of Darkness, The Running Man, the old one. The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, Teen Wolf 2, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Three Men and a Baby, Throw Mama from the Train, Wall Street, Eddie Murphy Raw, Good Morning Vietnam, Empire of the Sun. And my best picture worthy, I have Evil Dead 2, Raising Arizona, The Untouchables, RoboCop, and The Princess Bride.
Yeah, some great films from 87. You had literally everything on my list except for one film that we hate, or I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't like, but it has probably the best tagline ever, which is This Time It's Personal, and that is Jaws the Revenge. Just want to bring that one up too, because I didn't hear that name, but I think that's just one of the best taglines of all time. But yeah, some great genre films. I mean, like horror this year is just so good. You know, you have Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Evil Dead 2, Witches of Eastwick. You know, I'm just like looking down the list. Even not horror, but genre like RoboCop and Monster Squad. Like just so many great genre films. And I think again it plays into the fact that this slate is just such a cool, diverse one in terms of style. Like no two films are the same in this slate in terms of what like the genre or like, you know, tone and presentation is like, time periods, all that stuff. So let's get into the 1987 or the 1988 Oscars, as I should say, because these films, nothing at PGA, nothing at Critics' Choice, obviously. BAFTA's tough because BAFTA's so British at that time that Last Emperor won. Hope and Glory was actually nominated the year before because it was a British film, but both of those got nominated. So really people were looking at the Globes, and again, Last Emperor and Hope and Glory win the Globes for Best Comedy and Drama, and, you know, Last Emperor had two. It had BAFTA, it had Golden Globes, so it was kind of the favorite. It was the big epic. Did people think it was going to sweep? Probably not, but it did. And then, you know, Broadcast News, Fatal Attraction, Moonstruck just kind of there along for the ride. But I mean, talking about Last Emperor, this is the second time, and I believe the last time since Gigi, where a film got nominated for 9 Oscars and won all 9 of them. It had a 100% record, which is very hard to do. I think it's easier when you don't have to factor in like acting prizes and stuff, but the fact that it won pretty much all the techs and director and picture and screenplay, like it really is an amazing feat for a film to win so much. We'll talk about if that's deserved a little bit later, but I believe it would only be matched again by Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings was 11 for 11, not even 9 for 9, but I don't think a film has gone 9 for 9 since. I might be wrong. You can correct me out there if you're listening. But even, you know, some of the biggest films ever, like Titanic lost a few acting Oscars, and like there's a really tough, it's a really tough feat to get 9 and sweep all 9. So in a very small league of its own. But in the first time in Oscar history, all 5 Best Director Oscars are not American. They were born outside of the U.S. You have some Canadian directors, Italian directors, just different walks of life, different cultures represented. And again, kind of why I love this slate too, is there's a lot of different filmmakers. You know, you have an Italian film that's set in China. You have a Canadian filmmaker making a film set in New York about Italians. Like it's just a really cool, like kind of diverse slate in that sense. Michael Douglas, another fun fact, becomes the first person to win both acting and producing Oscars. He won a producing Oscar for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1975, and then finally won an acting Oscar, not for the film that we'll talk about today, Fatal Attraction, but he won for Wall Street. So Michael Douglas kind of became a pretty notable name in that sense. But that's kind of it. I don't really have any huge awards, anything else to bring up. They did add a special achievement for sound effects editing for RoboCop. That was before the sound Oscar was a thing. So very, very cool that, it used to be sound being sound mixing, but they added sound effects editing because of RoboCop, because it was such a success. But that's it for 1987. Chevy Chase hosted the awards. But otherwise, I think we're pretty good. I think we can now transition into the films themselves. Let's keep our TVs on. We're watching the Oscars, and what comes after the Oscars? We have some broadcast news. So, Chad, tell us about broadcast news.
Sure. Broadcast News, directed by James L. Brooks, written by James L. Brooks, cinematography by Michael Ballhaus, music by Bill Conti, starring William Hurt, Albert Brooks, no relation, Holly Hunter, Robert Prosky, Lois Childs, Joan Cusack, Peter Hacks, Christian Clemenson, Jack Nicholson, who's like kind of barely in the movie actually, Leo Burmester, and John Cusack. He was in this. I didn't even notice him.
He's hidden somewhere in there.
Synopsis, and I'm actually, this is a little wordy. I'm not too sure about this.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Bear with me. A broadcast news station struggles to find their direction as a reporter named Jane values hard-hitting news and journalistic integrity. Another reporter named Aaron is a great writer but struggles with the social skills and presentation. And a new reporter named Tom isn't seen as very smart but is valued for his appearance and charisma. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, you nail. I mean, that's the movie, right? It is complex. It's not an easy like. I mean, you could just say like it's about broadcast news. Like, I mean, it is, but like it really is about these three individuals and having very very different personalities, very different like journeys, very different goals and ambitions, but somehow all finding themselves kind of tangled in the same web, which is really interesting. And it's not just like a love triangle story either. I feel like that's a very like simple and kind of not giving the film its justice to just call it a love triangle, because it really isn't in a way. There's a lot of different just very small details, ins and outs, that don't make it quite a love triangle. It's a very different kind of complex relationship story in other senses. But I just want to say, you brought it up during the history when you're talking about Simpsons and Tracy Ullman, but like, what a year for James L. Brooks, right? Like, he came off of doing Terms of Endearment, winning the Oscar for that, which we haven't talked about, but we will. And then, like, comes out with this movie, which many people are calling the best of the year, gets all these Oscar nominations, creates probably the best animated, long-running sitcom of all time, on another show that's really well-reviewed, Tracy Ullman Show, which he also created. Like, he is just thriving this year. James L. Brooks kind of dominated the pop culture space for a long period of time. And I'll say I gave him a lot of flack for As Good As It Gets because I didn't love that movie. I gave him a lot of credit for Jerry Maguire because I love that movie, even though he was more of a producer, less of a director. But I think this is the one where I'm finally like, you know what? I think As Good As It Gets was the fluke. This is the one where I'm like, okay, no, he's great. He's got it down. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Terms of Endearment will take it back down again. But I really do think, maybe maybe As Good As It Gets deserves another watch for me, because after watching this, I'm like, I'm such a James L. Brooks fan after this. I'm like, I don't know how I ever talked badly about one of his films. You know what I mean? So, this has definitely inspired me to like want to go back and watch more of his stuff. And I know his latest film, Ella McKay, was not reviewed well, but even then, like, I just want to kind of absorb it all to see like, okay, why do some succeed? Why do some falter? Because as you kind of alluded to earlier, there's a lot of broad acting, I think, in this thing. So that kind of is a turnoff to some, but I think for some reason it works really, really well here. Chad, what were your thoughts on broadcast news?
Yeah, like I started watching this like I think a week or two ago, and then like I started watching it again. I realized I was like, you know what, I haven't given this like the justice it deserves. So I kind of started it again, and I just finished it like not too long before we recorded, and I really like this one a lot.
Yeah,
I think this one's pretty incredible. And yeah, I think it's because it's just got a great focus on the characters. I think, all of the acting is great, all the way down to, kind of one of the performances that makes the movie, which is Joan Cusack being very Joan Cusack.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's terrific.
And I was watching it and, sitting there like trying to like figure out, like, should I tell Elliot that that's Jesse? Should I tell Elliot that that's Elastigirl from The Incredibles?
Right. Yeah. Oh, okay. I see now. I was like, why is he wearing? I get it.
Sometimes I just like to wear dad shirts, but yeah, it's another tie-in. I realized after I put the shirt on that it was a tie-in. But yeah, I love that this is about the broadcast news station and like the different kind of philosophies of and I couldn't help but think about like Anchorman and Anchorman 2, where as silly as they are, like kind of poke fun at the same thing that broadcast news does and network does. That is just like the hard-hitting journalism and the actual like integrity and all that stuff that Jane loves and is passionate about, versus the station wanting to make money, wanting to sell. And then Tom kind of embodying that but being very good. And kind of like the two-handed like thing is like, you want the actual stories to sell. I know that Albert Brooks's character like wants that to be like the main, because he's a great writer, but like he cannot sell anything.
No.
And yet you want it to be that these stories sell themselves.
Yeah.
But they are not understanding that like this isn't like a newspaper. This is a television show, and so you need appearance to be a thing. I mean, it just it says a lot when you had like the John F. Kennedy versus Robert Nixon debate being like the first televised debate, and then JFK like wiped the floor with them. I think I got those two presidents right? That faced off together, and it's because it's all about presentation, and that's what like Tom tells Albert Brooks's character, where he's like, you need to sell it. If you find yourself just reading, you actually need to kind of sell it a little bit. And I feel like the movie's kind of saying like, that's not a bad thing to be able to, take information and, give it to people in a very pleasant package that they like, but they don't like to see some sweaty guy sitting there, no matter how good of a writer he is. It's very like unappealing if you don't know how to present your arguments well. I do that with like debate, where it's like I can write down all my arguments and, kind of get them really good, but sometimes I don't know how to present them the best, and then you might lose your debate. Very, very similar to that. I mean, I love a lot of these characters. I really want to get into it, but I don't want to hog the time.
No, I love it. And I think it's cool that you're opening with like the news of it all, because you brought up Network, and I think that's the one that like kind of feels the most similar in this sense. But even Network, like it's kind of satirizing the whole like business side of it, and like really talking about like the process and like what network television stands for. Was here, like, yes, it's all about that, but I think it's more directly about the characters than it is about the circumstances, which I think is really, really nice. Because like, yes, you get all this really nuanced stuff about broadcast television, but again, I think it's more about who these people are and who they are kind of channels through their work and how they bring that to their work. And William Hurt's character, being kind of this more, he's more in tune with the whole presentation side of it. It's just he's not the best writer, so he needs guidance, but like that's not really what matters, because he's the one who succeeds more than any of them. But Albert Brooks obviously has the right writing style but can't present it. And I like how it also kind of plays into the love triangle of it all. I hate dismissing this as a love triangle, but like the idea that, again, you think throughout this movie, it's is she going to choose him or is she going to choose him? And I love that it's neither of them. I love that it's really like they're both the wrong guy, but you're also not necessarily rooting against either of them either. You don't want her to end up with either of them because when either of them are right for her, but I also feel like both of them make sense as to why they're important in her journey. I think William Hurt, really to show that she has this really great collaborative partner, someone that brings the best out of her as a producer, and also one that just like finds her attractive and finds her, beautiful and like, a more like adult romance. And then Albert Brooks, which is kind of a little bit more of that like childlike crush type deal, where she just like finds this really great friendship, but ultimately doesn't have that physical attraction toward him. And what's funny is like he's open about his feelings toward her, and I think that's also something that like I think a normal movie like this, they would make the Albert Brooks character have a thing for her and she wouldn't know about it, and it would be this big revelation, it'd be this big awkward conversation, but it's not. Like, she knows he likes her this whole time. And I think that also plays a really interesting part in making this not a love triangle, because it's very one-sided. She's not choosing between those two guys. She's never liked Albert Brooks. She's entertaining the idea of William Hurt, but then at the end she realizes he's not the right guy. But Albert Brooks was never the right guy. And I also don't think the audience is meant to root for Albert Brooks to even get Holly Hunter either. And I think that's what's really special about it. You're not ever being like, no, she should leave William Hurt for him. Because the second she does blow William Hurt off and goes and visits him at home, like, you're almost kind of like, girl, why'd you leave? Like, that was, your night was going so well, And I think that's the testament of this movie. There's no bad guys in this movie. And even though William Hurt is a little inauthentic in some of his practices and the way he presents the media. Like, that's ultimately what a lot of newscasters do, and I don't necessarily think he's a bad guy for it either, because he clearly still wanted to be with her. So again, I don't think this movie kind of villainizes any of these characters, but makes it clear that they all have flaws and they're all like not right for one another. But then this beautiful scene happens where they're all together at the end anyway as friends, and I think that's something that's so unconventional that we never see in a movie like this. So much so to like Albert Brooks's kid is like, you know, talks to William Hurt, and it's like you would never think that like this is where these characters would end up if you started this thing. I think a lesser film, a more like Hollywood romanticized film, would have her leave William Hurt and go back to Albert Brooks, and then it would be them kind of later in life. But they never do that, and I really love that about this film. I love all the interesting choices it makes. And James L. Brooks didn't know how he was going to end the film. He was like, I'm going to, you know, put these cards in play. It's almost like a Mike Leigh film, like where like he's like, I don't know where this is going to end up, but you know, we're going to film it this way, this way, this way, and she's going to get into the airport, and I'm going to decide in that moment if she's going to get out and break up with him, or get out and go with him, or if Albert Brooks is going to come into the car and take her away, and then it ended up being neither of those things. So I think that's just really cool, and it just makes for a very different experience, because the film itself, like, we have a lot of journalism films, we have a lot of like kind of sappier melodramas, like comedies, like this isn't necessarily unique in that sense, but it's unique in the fact that these characters are so unique, so uniquely written, so uniquely presented, so uniquely acted as well. And I think that's what is the key and the magic to this one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree. I love how kind of like, I mean, you hit it. I think I love how just complex the characters are, where like they're all likable in different ways, but then they're also all unlikable in different ways, and it just shows just how they are like, you know, fully like people. Because like there's so many times that I kind of hate Albert Brooks's character, because it's just like some of the things that he says sometimes, like when, you know, he has that whole moment where he's like, you know, I don't know, it feels like he's about to say something nice, and then it turns into something ugly. That he said, you know, I'm going to point at show my son the single fat lady that's walking around. And then I'm just like, how can you say that to a friend like that? It's just so ugly. And yet I there's other sides to him where I'm like, you know, well, you can totally tell that like he's really good at his job, that he does really love his friends. You can tell that he didn't mean to say that, and stuff. And then he, you know, gives her, you know, the tip about Tom, but then that also kind of feels like he's, instead of like showing her, you know, who Tom is so she doesn't make a mistake, it feels like he's trying to like just like sabotage her relationship because he's jealous. And so what I'm saying is like, it's not like he's like a villain of the story or like a bad guy, but it just shows just how sometimes he can't let his you know, flaws, you know, his big flaws, you know, get in the way of himself sometimes. And then you have Tom, who I really like Tom a lot. I think maybe it's like everyone else is getting swooned. Maybe I'm getting swooned by Tom a little bit, where I'm just like, he's so charismatic and stuff, but like it feels like he is like a really nice guy. And like you would think like the hot shot new anchor is going to be kind of like really nice on camera and then a jerk behind the scenes, but he's, I feel like, so nice, you know, to like everyone and stuff. And there's only like little moments where you feel like maybe he's not as much, but then you have the integrity question. And I know that like for someone like Jane, that's so against her code, where she's just like, you can't do that at all. That's, you know, totally against what I stand for. But for him, he's like trying to sell something. Like, if we look at the end of the day, because he's telling a story about, you know, the rise in date rape and stuff, and like getting out awareness of that, which is a very good thing to do. I don't feel like he's doing that just to make money or become a great reporter or a great visual thing. I think he's actually trying to get awareness on the issue, and that's why like he sells it, and he's like selling it to her, and he's like, you know, please don't trash my idea too hard. Just let me throw it out there and see if it has something. And then, it totally does. It's just the fact that, he doesn't have a natural tear, and then he
Yeah.
wants to like kind of like have that to sell it. And so he kind of like fakes that. And to her, that's
Yeah.
like one of the worst things you can do. And to me, I'm kind of on his side a little bit, where I'm like,
Hmm.
I totally get where like it's like you want that like real raw, like even like when they go to the Sandinistas or whatever, and she's like, no, we can't tell them what to do. We have to see what they naturally would do. And the guy's like, should I put this boot on or not? Like, what
Yeah.
is going on? They've already, by introducing themselves there, changed things.
Hmm.
So, like, it's hard when you're trying to sell something. You don't want it to be boring. You don't want people to tune out. So sometimes you have to have a little bit of showmanship. You have to kind of like, actually, if I have a tier right now, that'll get other people to get emotionally
Yeah.
involved as well. And I think that can be important. So I
Yeah.
feel like there's no cut and dry,
Right.
morality thing here with any of that. So it's just,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can decide who you side with a lot of these times.
Yeah,
So
and the thing is, it's like, yeah, like it's a little inauthentic, but again, like, yeah, for what he's going for and trying to sell the issue, it is important. But then again, if that is Holly Hunter's code, that's her code, and that I think that's also interesting too. Is like
yeah,
the movie doesn't necessarily say that he's wrong for doing that as much as he's wrong for her for doing that because she
yes,
just wants something
yeah,
different, and maybe it's just the fact that she can't date someone she works with, or she can't date someone that is so close in this line of work with her. And it's kind of like that whole idea of like, don't shit where you eat type deal. Like, don't eat where you shit. I don't know what the phrase is, but like, be careful because, when you're in such a tight bubble and everyone's kind of working closely with one another, like, and you have this personal relationship that goes either good or badly, it's why at the end we see them all kind of going their separate ways but still maintaining a friendship because they could always have that friendship. They could always have that unity and togetherness. It's just romantically it's hard when you both work in the same line of work and just your two morals don't really line up in the same way. But I agree, I don't think anyone's right or wrong in that situation, and
yeah,
that's what is so beautiful about the movie. I think they're both the wrong guy, but they're both fine guys, and I think she's obviously an amazing woman and she's so driven. And I think that's another great thing about this movie is because she doesn't end up with either of them, it still makes it focus on the fact that she is a woman trying to trailblaze, this kind of position and try to break through as a woman in this field. And I think for younger women or even women who are a little older, like to see this, it's probably very inspirational, especially in the late '80s. To kind of get this vibe of this woman kind of choosing and having this independence and having this choice and this power in this field that is so male dominated, and it's kind of like the
yeah,
Silence of the Lambs thing in that way.
yes,
Which makes it beautiful that it isn't a love story at the end of the day. It's more of a love story between Holly Hunter and journalism, if anything else.
yes,
And that's kind of what makes it
yes.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think that's just such a great thing to say, where it's like, it is progressive in that way, and it's not trying to like, pigeonhole this into a love story. Like, it has that element to it, like you've been saying this whole time, but it's not about that. Like, if you, watch the movie, you can see that, like, yeah, it is mostly about the journalism aspect of it and the characters, but not really getting down to a will they won't they kind of trope.
Yeah.
It flirts with that a little bit, but it really is just down to the characters and what's right for them. Like, she's not trying to choose between them, she's trying to choose what's best for her, which I think is a very subtle difference, but like key difference in that, it's just what's right for the character just in general. And I love how, even she's trying to figure out, kind of in a very hot fuzz kind of way, how do I turn it off? Like, people have
Hmm.
been saying, don't edit this relationship, don't stop being a producer all the time, and live your life a little bit differently. And you can see it when she's in the cab. She's like, don't take that way because that way is terrible. Wait a second, go whichever way you want, and then pause, and then she's like, yeah, but that way would be better though.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you can try to change, like, and be different, but also you're always kind of gonna be yourself, and that's a good thing. And it's not a bad thing. It's maybe kind of like a neutral thing where it's like, stay true to yourself, but maybe be aware sometimes of things that you do that make other people feel weird or like you're just being total, domination kind of a deal. But I think it makes her a great character. And yeah, I really in different ways love like all of these characters. It actually made me really sad, like when at the end of the movie when they're breaking up because they made such a good team.
Yeah.
I feel like if they could have just like, because they were all just getting in their own and each other's ways, where like I'm like, she's a great producer, he's a great writer, he's a great showman. They would make the best team. And like, but Albert Brooks is like, but no, but I want to be the showman. I want to be the center of attention. And it's like, I totally get that. But sometimes knowing what you're great at and staying in that lane, I don't want to, it sounds bad to be like, stay in your lane, but like just knowing what you're good at and trying to focus a lot of your energy on that can be a really great thing instead of, trying to do something that you're obviously not fit for, or maybe you can do like a side presenter thing or work on it a lot more and get better at doing it, but trying to force it just because like you're jealous and he's gonna get the girl or whatever's in your mind. I feel like they could have made such a great team, especially with Joan Cusack ready to take herself out to get things on air, which is a great bit of physical comedy that she crushed.
Yeah, Joan Cusack is just so good in this. And I think that's the thing is, like, it's not just a three-hander. You've got three great performances at its center. But yeah, like, it's all the supporting roles, too. It's all just, like, the little flavors and things that make up this community. Which is kind of why, like, I love journalism films. It's why, like, when we covered All the President's Men, Spotlight, like, all these movies, it's great because it's like you get to see the process, you get to see like the work and the actual like nitty gritty of it, which I think they don't shy away from, even though it is more about the characters than it is about the work. But yeah, I agree. Like I think together they work so well, but ultimately that's just not how they were meant to be. Just because we are people at the end of the day. We can't just like put everything aside and bottle it all up. We have to be human, and that's I think what this film is getting at. I will reserve until we watch Terms of Endearment to say that this is like his masterpiece, but I think this is probably James L. Brooks. I mean, if you don't count The Simpsons, which is obviously like his most successful thing, but like I do think this is probably his masterpiece. I don't see a world where he makes a better film than this, not because he's not capable, but because this is just such a high bar to top,
Yeah, and this is coming from someone, I'm not on like Alan level of you'll
as good as it gets.
Yeah, of as good as it gets, but I like that movie a lot, and I still think I like Broadcast News just a little bit better because I do think all the characters a little bit more interesting and a little bit more well rounded, and you can tell like we've been like gushing about this movie, and it's sometimes when you get like really, really good movies, like it's hard to talk about them because you're just like it's great, But here we're just like going on, and I'm just like but it's because we love talking about it. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a testament to a really good movie that you can love it and still find things to talk about it that aren't criticisms, because really the only criticisms we have are decisions the characters make, but that's not a criticism of the movie as much as it is that these characters are complex and well written and very nuanced, and I think that's really cool. Is like if your biggest criticisms are in the decisions the characters make but they still feel like they make sense in the overall writing and journey, then that's a good film. We're not complaining at all about the cinematography, about the screenwriting, about the editing. A lot of split diopter shots in this film, which I freaking love. You know me, and I know you were texting me. You're like, split diopter, and I was like, I know what movie he's watching. This has so many of them, and I think it's just such a cool, again, artful film that doesn't have to be artful, well-acted film that doesn't have to be well-acted because the characters are so well-written, but like it is all of the above. It is everything. So
this is definitely a movie that because I have the Criterion.
Nice.
The sale, I grabbed it. I definitely want to dive into it more and read more about it and rewatch it with Carrie because she watched like part of it, but like I don't think either of us were giving it full attention. Yeah. And then I would just want to rewatch it with her while she can actually pay attention because I'm like, no, this one for sure. Yeah. You're gonna love. I think she'll really love it because it does have a strong woman performance, and Joan Cusack being her best self.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of the late great Catherine O'Hara and a lot of
Hmm.
these
Yeah.
actresses that are just so funny because how crazy they can be, and
Yeah.
like the explosive kind of person that can be like a Jessie the cowgirl, yodeling cowgirl. So
Yeah. And this is one of our first performances, I believe, because
one of
when
the
was
early
Say
ones.
Anything? Was that earlier?
I think it was the year
Yeah,
after.
because Working Girl, which she got
Can't
nominated for the Oscar for, was a year after. Because we'll cover that at some
Say
point too. Because that was
anything.
nominated for Best
Oh, Say
Picture.
Anything was 89, so it was
Okay, yeah.
two.
So this was it. I think this is one of her breakout roles, and then yeah,
Yeah,
she would go on to get Working Girl, which she get nominated for the Oscar for the year after, which we'll talk about because it's Best Picture nominated. And then yeah, and then Say Anything, and then obviously her career would continue to
I
flourish.
just,
So
I just, I'm trying to remember the line. It's like, is this because I won an award or something like that?
yeah. Oh, it's so good. Again, and so funny. We didn't really talk about the comedy, but it's just, I mean, it's so funny. And that's the thing. It's funny. It's not, it's not this harsh, sorrowful, like, love triangle, very dramatic. It's dramatic, but it's funny. It ultimately is.
Yeah.
So. Anything else on broadcast news, Chad? I know we have to move on, but it's
I want to
just it's
keep,
so
I
good.
want to keep talking about this one, but we got to move on.
Yeah, we'll have plenty more times to talk about it because we will be talking about James L. Brooks again at some point. So maybe it'll come up in conversation when we talk about Terms of Endearment, the one that won. This didn't win any, sadly. This is going to be a theme for the day, is that a lot of these films don't win anything because one film kind of won everything, and then the acting prizes went to a different film. So broadcast news doesn't win any of its Oscars, but it's nominated for 7 awards. Nominated for Best Picture, all 3 actors. For Best Actor, William Hurt. Best Actress, Holly Hunter. Best Supporting Actor, Albert Brooks. Best Original Screenplay, Cinematography, and Film Editing. So there we go. We're going to go from something so light, so comedic, so melodramatic to something a lot darker. Chad's a horror fan. We talked about a lot of horror movies. I could say this is teetering on it. It's an erotic thriller, but it's getting close to the horror realm, depending on how you look at it. It is Fatal Attraction, Chad. Tell us about Fatal Attraction.
Oh yeah, it definitely does have some horror-esque vibes to it for sure, which is very interesting. Fatal Attraction, directed by Adrian Lynn, written by James Dearden, cinematography by Howard Atherton, music by Maurice Jarre, starring Michael Douglas, Glenn Close, Ann Archer, Ellen Hamilton, Stuart Pinkin, Ellen Foley, Fred Gwynn, Meg Mundy, Tom Brennan, Lois Smith, and I thought she was going to have a bigger role, but she's in it for like just a few seconds.
Yeah.
Jane Krakowski from 30 Rock. Synopsis: when a family man engages in an extramarital affair, he gets more than he bargained for when his mistress turns out to be a violent psychopath. Okay, that may be one of my best synopsis ever. Based on the 1980 novel Diversion by James Dearden.
Yeah. Very rarely will we cover erotic thrillers. I feel like this is kind of a genre that like peaked in the 80s and then like had some resurgences, obviously like Gone Girl being another one. There are a few.
That's one, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like as much of a thriller. There's not like a dangerous element. Like there's no like violence per se, but like this kind of like dark, twisted kind of erotic. It's definitely an erotic film, but like an erotic thriller in this sense, like very just kind of 80s. Even the way they're styled, the hair and the outfits and just the lighting and the elevators. I brought up a horror comparison because like, whenever they're in that elevator, it always reminds me of Child's Play. Just the idea that like she's standing at the top of this elevator and he's trapped. It's very Chucky of it. But it does feel that way in a sense that she almost kind of becomes this slasher where like he can't get rid of her and she keeps appearing and finding ways in. And it does remind me of horror in the sense because it's like he keeps trying to get rid of her and she keeps coming back and she kidnaps a kid. Like there's a lot of really horrific stuff that happens. I just think it's a very interesting thing to talk about considering we don't really talk about erotic thrillers on this show. Because again, I feel like this is one of those genres that Hollywood just kind of says, yeah, like that's good fun and all. It's a good time at the movies, but they don't really treat as seriously. Because I do think if like Hitchcock made this movie back in like the 40s or 50s, it would probably win an Oscar. So it feels very much like just like a bygone era, or it just didn't hit the right point later on. But I'm glad this one got some notice because it's really good. But Chad, what do you think of this one?
It's interesting because it's just like that is the big question I think about this one is this movie is what it is. It's a very specific type of movie. I mean, you can throw a subgenre at it, And, just the big question is like, is this type of movie a best picture level movie? And we all the time will talk about notable films. I'll throw in a lot of, best picture, like this is a best picture. I know some of them are a little bit jokey, but some of them are like, well, if the Academy was different, or if we change our thinking on how like an Oscar movie should be, like a best picture level, I mean, because of course, acting, yes, this should definitely get like some acting nods, stuff like that. And it did. But is it best picture level? And I don't know. I'm interested to find out from this discussion, what
Yeah.
you think, because I'm actually not sure. I think
Mm-hmm.
that it is really good. I feel like I've seen a lot of movies kind of like this.
Mm.
I feel like this is like when What Lies Beneath kind of it feels
Mm.
like this a little bit. Gave me some of that vibes. And it's just about a family getting torn apart by a crazed lunatic. And it has a really great performance in it. And they keep upping the stakes. There's definitely a Chekhov's gun situation in there. It's like that's going to come back later.
Yeah.
As he opens that drawer and you see that gun, you're like, when's that going to be used? The
Yeah.
knife too, and all this stuff. There is the one part that I skipped over because I was like, I'm not seeing the animal cruelty part.
Mm.
I knew I like looked it up. I was like, I know exactly when it's going to
Yeah.
happen, and I
Yeah.
went just 10 seconds later, and
Yeah.
it's like a very famous scene where a bunny dies,
Yeah.
and I wasn't too hot on that, but yeah, it's very harrowing movie, very scary, intense. You don't know what this woman is going to do. She's got a lot of at first it kind of manifests as like a suicidal thing, like don't leave me, I'll kill myself.
Yeah. It's Sunset Boulevard. Very, very, very
Yes,
likely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then she starts to get really homicidal and just like doing a lot of like, I mean, killing a pet, kidnapping the daughter, but then like not like for long, but just kind of like acting like her mommy or something,
Yeah. It's
which is
almost
very,
it's almost less of like a tactic to like scare the family or like well, this is why I think it is. I don't necessarily want to say it's like my number one or anything, but like best picture worthy is because like there's the very basic level of looking at it is like she could be doing this as like because she's crazy and a lunatic and like wants to scare this family, wants to basically punish him for not wanting her. But
yeah.
also part of it is like, what if she's just genuinely obsessed with him, and like genuinely in her something chemically in her brain just like needs him so much that when like she sees the family with this bunny and the bunny is more loved than she is, she needs to take out that bunny because that's a threat, because he'll always love that bunny more than he'll love her. And then like the daughter, it's more like, well, he loves her daughter, so I want to love her daughter, like I want to take her places because if I make her happy, then I'm doing what he wants to do, which is to make his daughter happy. There's that element of like maybe she's just genuinely obsessed with him, and that's why she like has this obsession with like wanting to ingrain herself in this family and be around him all the
Yeah.
time. Or is it the revenge thing? Is it her feeling like she was wrong because he impregnated her and basically said, "Whoops, sorry, don't want it on my hands. Sorry, bye." But then again, is she actually pregnant? That's another
Oh,
question.
that's,
Well, that's the thing, and I think that's what does make this a little bit more
is
layered
it?
than a
Yeah.
regular basic erotic thriller. And I think it's refreshing to have a film like this in the slate. I agree. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if this is the most unique of its kind, but it is again one of the earliest of its kind. So maybe because a
Mhm.
lot of films follow this template, maybe because this was so novel at the time. But it feels like just a really good like barn burner paperback that you would like read at the airport. Like just really keep you at the edge of your seat. Because also there's that element of like, well, he started it. Like he's the one at fault. Not entirely. She's obviously a maniac. She does some very terrible things, but like he cheats on her. If he didn't cheat on her, none of this would happen. And like I think that's also something to be said is like be careful what you wish for type deal. It's like the obsession thing of like, well, you are the reason this started in the first place, so you kind of have to not necessarily take the whole blame for it, but you are responsible. You have to be the way to put an end to this. And I like that ultimately it's Anne Archer's character that kind of gets the final shot. She's the one who kind of gets the final say because she's the one who's totally innocent in all this. She didn't cheat. She didn't decide for this woman to come into her life. she let this woman in thinking she was just interested in her house. Like, she's totally innocent in this, and she just wants to protect the peace in the family. And I think that's why
Yeah.
it's cool that the film ends on that shot of the family, because that's ultimately what it is. And I think Anne Archer is like the protagonist, if you want to look at it that way, because her husband screwed her over by cheating on her, and then brought this other maniac into her life, and now both of them are putting herself and her daughter in danger. And I think that's just really cool that Anne Archer kind of gets the final stamp on it. I think she's my favorite
Yeah.
part of the movie because of that, performance-wise and character-wise. But I do think, yeah, like, it's just really... I think it's a little bit more nuanced because of all that ins and outs of, like,
Yeah.
what exactly is Glenn Close's character's motive? What exactly is she getting at? Is she going for revenge? Is she genuinely just crazy and obsessed? Is she genuinely kind of depressed, and, like, she finally saw this glimmer of hope, and then it was immediately taken away again, and she has now this pregnancy, and she has these financial things to think about with the pregnancy. And again, I love how we both had the same reaction. Like, is it actually true? Is she actually pregnant? I
Yeah.
don't think so, but or maybe she thinks she is. Maybe she's pathological in that sense, you know.
That,
And that's also
yeah.
why I think Glenn Close is a cool character too, and how she plays it, because it's interesting to find the line of when she's being sincere, when she's being meticulous and
Yeah.
calculated and malicious. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that, and I think it's fascinating because it's like when we put the best picture stamp on something, like, you know, like what does that do to like elevate it? Because it's like I could see this movie just being like a really good thriller that, you know, you don't really think about otherwise, but then it gets elevated to the best picture level. And I'm like, you know, is that because they couldn't find anything else, or is that because, you know, it's like a really good movie? I think like when you say it's kind of like a pioneer in its subgenre, I mean, we'll get movies like, you know, The Fugitive later on, you know, getting
yeah,
nods, you know, certain like Harrison Ford level action. We had Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, you have
yeah,
certain movies that you're just like, you know, that's just a really great action movie or erotic thriller, you know, kind of deal. But should it be elevated to like a best picture status? And I find it interesting when, you know, things finally are. And then interesting when some movies aren't. Like you're like, you know, Blade Runner 2049, how did that not get a best picture
yeah,
nomination? But then
yeah,
Dune would, kind of a deal. And it's just like certain movies that you say that like are you see are a little bit similar to this don't get elevated, but this does. I like how we can like, you know, pick out like little nuances that's like, well, this is why this movie is maybe a little bit more brilliant or nuanced than others. Like, you know, yeah, it kind of started this craze, you know, like you talked about, like an erotic thriller like novel that you
hmm
would read. This is like a really great version of that.
yeah,
I did want to go and talk just a little bit real quick
yeah,
about little baby Ellen, because
hmm
she's so adorable,
yeah,
and I felt so bad for her this whole
yeah,
movie because she's so sweet, and I'm just like, you know, why can't I just want Ellen to be happy? That was my whole movie, because I'm a dad. I was just
hmm
like, I just want Ellen to be happy. I felt really bad. There was like a moment where he like, you know, she his wife found out about the cheating, and then she's like, you know, that now this lady is coming after us, and get out of the house, kind of a deal. And that's kind of like, you know, it would be like one of my worst nightmares, you know, not that I would cheat, but
right,
like,
right.
you know, if God forbid I did, and then I had a crazed lunatic coming after me, and then I had to like not see my son. That's just anything with
Yeah.
that is just a nightmare for me.
And
So
honestly though, it is validated, because it's like, if she's coming after him, I need him away because I want to protect the kid, and that's where
yeah,
it gets
yeah,
complex, because it's like, as a dad, you never want to be away from your kid, but also it's like, but this is the way to protect it. But then
you
again,
should have thought about that before.
you see her take the kid to the amusement park, and the kid is happy, and it's like, it's that moral dilemma of like, oh shoot, like, this is where it plays with the audience's manipulation too, because you think she's gonna do something bad and she doesn't, and it's
Yeah,
kind of the reverse twist of what you think is gonna transpire.
yeah, and it adds a little bit of nuance to that character. I totally agree, and you know, but then you know the bunny thing, and then you know them screaming at each other, and just it seems like everything like bad could happen to that kid. She's just a little
I
baby, and
know.
she's so happy and sweet, and I'm just like, you know, she needs to be happy. So I'm glad that like it ends the way it does. Although I just kind of wonder like if it would have been a little bit different, like if they ever like decided not to have the explosive ending where that she dies and stuff like
The
that.
Scream ending where she pops out of the bathtub, she's still alive.
I'm glad they didn't do that. Did they do that? They didn't have.
Yes, he
It
drowned.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he drowns her in the bathtub, and you think she's dead, and then he's like hugging his wife, and she pops up, and then his wife gets the final shot, and that's what I was talking about
that's
earlier.
right.
It's nice
That's right.
that
That's right.
you, and that's the
I
thing. If it,
forgot the order of events. Like
yeah,
now I
if
remember that. It's like
yeah,
Die Hard. It's like the
yeah, yes, yeah. But if it had ended with Michael Douglas doing it, I do think it does knock the film down a peg because, like,
agree.
bro, you're at fault, and now like, oh, all of a sudden you're gonna be
Yeah.
the hero and save your wife and kid. Like, you're the
No.
reason they're in this mess. And I've never liked Michael Douglas as an actor. I think because he plays douchebags really well. But now I kind of get it. I'm like, I do think he works for a specific type of role, and I think it's cool that he won the Oscar this year for something completely different. Big year for him. But yeah, like I like that she gets a final blow because it really is like it's his mess. And
Yes.
even though it ends on the family photo, it is still like I don't know if this family still recovers though. That's a problem. Like this is a very traumatic event. You lost the bunny. You lost your trust in your husband. Like one little mistake. And it was a conscious mistake. It wasn't even like she
Yeah.
got him drunk and roofied him and killed it. Like no, like he actively and kept pursuing it too for a little while, and that's the problem.
Very
yeah,
big deception,
yeah,
and there's your trust is kind of gone at that
hmm
point with
yeah,
him. Even though like he does like the right thing, of course, and it gets really crazy. Like we're
yeah,
sitting there like call the cops. Like what are you doing?
right,
Kind of a deal. Like just go there and confront her, and then like almost like I guess in his mind it's kind of like will they believe me, or
yeah,
I don't know what's going on in his head, but like they like fight in the thing, and then I'm just like Jesus, like
hmm
this is getting really crazy.
Well, and it's the
Um,
idea of if you go to the cops, everyone's gonna know what you did. Like you're not gonna be able to hide this. When he kind of talked to his friend about it,
oh, I
it's that
guess
idea. Yeah, like he goes to her because he's like, you need to stop this, and it's not until it gets completely blown out of
yeah.
proportion. But then at that point, he has no choice but to kind of just fight back
I mean,
himself.
dude. I mean, I guess they do, but at one point, it's just guys. As soon as she like abducts your child, it should be all over.
Oh yeah,
I don't care about my like reputation at that point. Like what the child's safety is the most important thing. Like
yeah.
anything else is out the door.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I yeah.
I was just gonna say, and that's why this slate is awesome because there's no cell phones, and so it could easily be like, hey, she's not at school, come, like, or like track the kid or put like an air tag on the kid. But in
I
a
was about to say,
1987 world, you
Elliot.
don't have that luxury. Same as broadcast news. It's like you have to literally go to his house every night to debrief the day because you can't text him or call him. Like it's really interesting how like technology kind of puts like a handicap on some of the events of these films, which I think makes them like you can't make this film now because now they would just call,
Yeah, I mean, you would just have to make it in a different way. It's kind of like
Yeah.
how 1996 Scream versus 2022 Scream is like
Yeah.
very different, but they kind of make the whole calling more like kind of more interesting. The way you can do locks with the phones and stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I love this. Yeah, as like a time capsule, but kind of as one of those nuanced genre films that you're just like, this is elevated, and I find that so fascinating because like at one point I could see if someone said, yeah, this is just a really great thriller, and the other person say like, this is one of the best that I've ever seen, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I could see it being elevated to that level. But yeah, I wasn't sure, and now I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit nuanced there.
Yeah. Anything else for you on Fatal Attraction, Chad? Or I know it's kind of a little less nuanced than broadcast news in the sense that we're not going to talk as long on it, but still, effectively does what it sets out to do for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean it's very tense if you watch it. Be in the right mindset. Very complex characters, and yeah, Glenn Close be crazy in this one. So sure,
Yeah.
like really.
Yeah, and still didn't win the Oscar. Still hasn't won the Oscar, but I believe she's getting one next year.
Yes.
She's getting an honorary. So long overdue there with Miss Glenn. Maybe she'll get
So
this prize. We'll
close.
have to find out. Yes. So, I see what you did. Fatal Attraction nominated for 6 Oscars, doesn't win any, but it's nominated for picture, director for Adrian Lin, actress for Glenn Close, supporting actress for Ann Archer, adapted screenplay, and film editing. So Glenn Close has been hoping for so long to get an Oscar, still has not found that glory. But let's talk about a film that presents a lot of hope and a lot of glory. It is Hope and Glory. Chad, tell us about Hope and Glory.
Hope and Glory, directed by John Boorman, written by John Boorman, cinematography by Philippe Rousselot, music by Peter Martin, starring Sarah Miles, David Heyman, Derek O'Connor, Susan Wooldridge, Ian Bannon, Sammy Davis, Jean-Marc Barr, Sebastian Rice Edwards, Annie Leone, and Geraldine Moore. Synopsis: an English family lives their lives as England declares war on Germany during World War II. Focus on a boy, very Belfast.
Yeah, it's a little Belfast. A little Life is Beautiful, a little bit of all those little things.
Very
Chad,
what was it? What was the one? Since you went away.
Since you went away, yeah.
Since you were gone, the Kelly Clarkson.
Since I'm gone. Chad, what do you think of Hope and Glory?
I like it. I feel like it's one of those like slice of life. It's just like about the family in the middle of the war, and like, you know, what are they gonna do when this is happening? What do they experience when this is happening, and like what kind of nuances and just different ways of life are you going to be or have when this is happening, when you're in like an active war zone kind of a deal. And you know, you're going to see fireworks, you're going to see like rogue blimps, I guess you're going to see I guess it wasn't even related to the war that their house gets like destroyed or something, to a fire. And then you're going to have like a little boy having like visions of himself in the war and just like thinking about it very differently from like how adults think about it. And you're going to have maybe like a calling to go help. Even though like for me, relating to the dad, like it's tough because like I could totally see where people are like, you know, this is like a, you know, existential level war. Every country's involved. Everybody's got to go do their part. You know, it's also very different because then like women probably weren't going to war. But now it would be very different because it would be like, you know, do the women go too? And for me, I probably wouldn't go still, just because like I would not leave my family. I would make sure that they're protected. But then again, like, you know, do you go to war to protect them?
Yeah.
And then you have like the idea of the families who, I guess, because the men went to war, can't really look after the kids. And so they want to send them to somewhere more safe. And then the idea of how the hell do you send your kids away? Kind of a deal. And the drama of that. But yeah, ultimately just becomes like Belfast, kind of like a story in like this boy's life and surrounding family, and his sister who, you know, falls in love with the soldier, and you know, it's like a drunk uncle.
Yeah, something like that. I like this one too. I think it's a little light, but it's supposed to be. And I think some people may criticize. Yeah, well, but that's the thing. I think some people might criticize this for being too slight for a war film and be like, you're not taking this seriously. But I think we forget that when we're kids, we have a different perception of the world than like, you know, any average person watching the news. Like, I didn't even start watching the news till I was a senior in high school. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's one of those things where it's like, and it's only because it was an election year, but I do think it's one of those things where, you know, as a kid, bombs going off and things happening, and you know, the war is exciting in a way, and it seems effed up to say that, but as a kid, that's what it is, and that's why so many kids, when they're young, are like, when I grow up, I want to be a police officer, or a soldier, or a fighter, or a superhero, you know, because you want that combat. You know, you're used to playing with little army toys. I mean, we see Toy Story, the little army guys. So many kids had those, you know, and they would construct little battles. Like, kids have a
The
fascination with battle and a an infatuation with it. Yeah, what were you gonna say, Chad?
Well, sorry, it's just like there's the one line that kind of encapsulates the thing that you're saying is
Yeah,
that when the kids don't have school anymore and they're like, "Thank you, Adolf," and you're
yeah,
just like, "What a fucked up thing to say," but like
yeah.
you're a kid, you don't know what
Right.
Adolf Hitler is. You're
Yeah,
just like, "Thanks,
in
no
your opinion,
school."
a school getting bombed down is like, oh, good, I don't have to go to school. But there's
Right?
so much worse things attached to it. And I think that's actually what makes this, as much as it is a comedy, obviously, as much as it is lighter, it's a coming of age film, slice of life. It's honestly a little sadder because they don't know the seriousness of what's going on.
Yeah,
And you, as an adult, have to kind of watch this and kind of long for the days where you did have that innocence. And it's kind of sad because, like, now we don't have that. When there's war, there's war. We're never going to have that feeling of being like, oh, but like we get more time with our families. We get to stay inside more. It's like the COVID thing. I'm sure there were a lot of kids who were like, we don't have to go to school. We get to stay at home and be on our laptops and like watch movies with mom and dad for
hell
2 years. That's great, but like it was really terrible. And like, yes, it was good quality time with the family, but it was because there was awful stuff going on in the world. And I think that's the thing here is like, you can't blame these kids. They're kids who are seeing these things and experiencing these things and kind of finding the magic and the fantasy of something that's very different and very foreign to them. And as an audience member, it kind of hurts. It's sad because it's like, your feelings aren't hurt by the kids, but you're hurt that the kids have this innocence and you'll never have that. And there's that idea of like time being lost and innocence being lost. And a lot of war films about kids are about kids learning the harshness of war and kind of like waking up to how terrible war is. But this is the opposite. This is where kids are able to find joy in light of the war and despite of the war. And it's kind of like life is beautiful in that sense. It's the guy playing the game with his kid in the concentration camps. Some people may say it's a little irresponsible to be like making light of such a thing, but like as a kid, you are making light of everything.
yeah.
You are making light of every single situation.
But
Even death is exciting in films. People are going into like the last Harry Potter movie, like, oh, who's gonna die? Who's your prediction? Who's gonna die? And it's like,
yeah.
wait, why are you? This is not a good thing. Like you're excited to find out who's gonna die in the last Harry Potter movie. You know what I mean? Like it's that idea of as a kid you have just different. Your brain is wired differently, and I think that's what this film really encapsulates very nicely. Is it a movie that I'm gonna rewatch a ton? Probably not, but it is one that I think for what it's going for and what it's trying to say and the themes it's trying to present and just presenting war in a different light too, because how many war films are the same old. It's very nice to get a different perspective, a la Belfast, a la Life is Beautiful, of just like a different perspective when we were a little bit more innocent to realize the harshness of what was going on and the bittersweetness of that.
Yeah, a la Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, another one. Yeah,
That
absolutely.
we'll get to at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree where it's like, just, I mean, the kind of idea of like, I don't know, it's weird because it's like, yes, this is World War II. Some of the worst things that have ever happened in the history of history happened in World War II. So it does make sense to be like, well, we have to take this very seriously. But then at the end of the day, like, when you look at like comedy and stuff like that, you see that like some of the best comedy is making jokes about the worst stuff because it's like you can't change what happened. Like you can't affect it. It just happened. It happened, way before, well, not way before, we were born, but, a little bit before we were born. So it's like, kind of making light sometimes of it is a way to, like you said, like examine it from a different lens, but then also just like, you can't change it. So why take it too seriously? You should take it seriously enough to where it never happens again.
Mm-hmm.
But also like, find, I guess there's no humor in it, but like find a way to cope with it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so I mean, I like the really heavy movies, a la Schindler's List. We'll get to at some point. That's like the most harrowing look at it, or The Pianist, which we covered. It's very, very harrowing and just like really, shows the horrors of it. And then a lot of these lighter ones that we're looking at, that's like showing it from a different perspective and all different angles. And then we see nowadays we get that movie Pressure that came out. It's like, what was the weather like during the war? And it's like, okay, so
We've run out of ideas.
right.
Yeah.
But but yeah, like I like how you framed this a little bit more in my head, where it's like, because at the beginning of the show, I was like, Belfast, and then you were like, yeah, it's like Belfast, it's like this, and then I'm like, oh, maybe this was like one of the first ones of
Yeah.
taking it to that like level of like, what were the kids doing around
Mm-hmm.
this, or like, like you Since You Went Away, it was kind of showing like the family during the war, but
Mm-hmm.
it was before World War II, right?
Yeah, it
That
was World War One, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so um, crazy. Like we covered movies before World War II,
Yeah.
and then after, and it's like just great, and then during, and it's
I'm
like,
trying to. Yeah, maybe Since You Went Away was during, because it was 1944. So I
right,
feel like it was either like it was
that's
one of those
right.
like very raw in the moment, but
But it was
yeah, like All
about
Quiet on the Western Front
oh,
is World War One.
very true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it. Like you said, I don't know if I'll like revisit it too much, if ever, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely enjoyed it. Oh, one of the heartbreaking moments of it was the moment as a dad when he's trying to like teach his son about baseball, like one last thing before he leaves. He teaches
Mm-hmm.
him like this move, like this is how you do it. It's like, what a thing to teach him, like something about baseball, like right before you leave.
Yeah.
um and it's, like, don't teach him about finances, but baseball, it's very important. And
Yeah.
then, but as a dad, it's like a special connection. Like I'm going to teach him like a little thing to make him good at, like throwing and stuff like that and having fun and whimsy. And then, when he's leaving and the son's just kind of like not saying anything to him, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
just remember what I taught you. And he's like leaving, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is like crushing me.
Yeah.
And then he's like, Dad. And they have that little catch moment before he just has to leave. And I'm just like, how do you leave?
I
How?
know.
There's
Yeah.
no way I could ever leave like that. But I never lived during World War II where I
Right.
had that question of,
Yeah.
should I go fight or should I stay with my family? So I'm glad I right now don't have to make that decision.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't leave.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting discussions to be had. I mean, I think this is one of those movies, yeah, like it's very episodic, very vignette heavy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a through line, but I think its overall themes are pretty clear cut. And that's the thing. It's got the least nuance in terms of like really breaking down these like character things and core things. Like it is very straightforward, but I think that's kind of nice. Again, it's very refreshing in a slate like this, especially given the fact that it's a war film. Like I saw this as a war film, but then I saw it as a comedy. I'm like, is it like a Doctor Strangelove kind of deal? But it's not. It's just a lighthearted coming of age film. I wouldn't even say comedy, more so just like lighthearted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it adds like a nice little flavor, especially considering the next film we'll talk about is a little bit more of that epic, not war film, but it does have that kind of epicness of what you would expect from like a darker kind of war film. And this one is just different from anything you'd expect. Kind of like how Life is Beautiful was that function for Saving Private Ryan and Thin Red Line when we covered it in 1998. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't even know, like, does this film kind of like meander a little bit towards the end where it's just like,
Yeah.
hunting stuff on the water or whatever they
Yeah,
were doing?
I feel like we get the point, and then it just kind of keeps going, and that's the thing. That's why it's probably not as rewatchable for me, is it because it kind of just peters out at a point. But I like
Like,
what it's doing. I like how it's trying, and it feels very autobiographical. I think this is a lot of like John Boorman's own, either his childhood or stuff he experienced as a
very
kid that he wanted to like kind of formulate. So, and it's kind of the thing with Belfast too. It's like when it's so personal, it's kind of like you have to kind of give him that pass of like,
yeah.
this is your story,
Let the uncle hunt down that little gopher or what squirrel or
There's a
whatever
rat or something. Yeah,
rat
yeah,
who's
yeah.
trying to get like.
No.
And I'm
Right.
like, don't get it, don't hit it.
No. Not this movie. But Hope and Glory, nominated for 5 Oscars, doesn't win a single one, but it's nominated for Picture, Director for John Boorman, Original Screenplay, Art Direction, and Cinematography. None of these films so far have won an Oscar. We're 0-0-0, but a film now that has won 9 Oscars. Of the 9 it was nominated for, an epic film in every sense of the word. It is The Last Emperor. Chad, tell us about the second of 3 Criterion releases, Bernardo Bertolucci's The Last Emperor.
The Last Emperor, directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, written by Mark Peplow and Bernardo Bertolucci. Cinematography by Vittorio Storaro. Music by Ryuichi Sakamoto, David Byrne, and Kong Soo. Starring Joan Lone, Joan Chen, Peter O'Toole, Ying Ruocheng, Victor Wong, Dennis Dunn, Ryuichi Sakamoto, Maggie Han, Rick Young, Vivian Wu, and Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa. Synopsis: A boy named Pu Yi is made to be the last emperor of China, but in making his own choices, he becomes a political prisoner. Based on the 1960 novel From Emperor to Citizen, the autobiography of Aisen Jioro Puyi by Puyi.
Yeah, nice. Sorry, a lot of names there. Very interesting. You have a Italian filmmaker making a film set in China, spanning so many years. You have American actors, British actors, Chinese actors, dubbing, young actors, 5 actors playing the same role. It's a giant production. Literally having to I think rent out a part of this for what is it called, the Forbidden? Help me out. Yeah, is it called the Forbidden Kingdom?
I think
something
so.
like that. Whatever it's called. But having to kind of get use of that area, and film in that space. Forbidden City. There it is. The Forbidden City. Getting authority to shoot in there, which is this giant, wide spanning, place with 1,000 rooms, and getting to film on location, but then build some more sets and build all these costumes and tell a story that is decades long. So yeah, this is definitely my cup of tea. But Chad, I want to know what your thoughts are first of The Last Emperor.
Very, very interesting. Very at first starting to watch it, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this one. Because, like you said, the dubbing's weird. There's some strange choices that they make. It feels very child abuse in a lot of ways, which is rough to watch and things like that. And then I'm also just kind of on the side where I'm like, yeah, it's a big production, it's epic, it's impressive, but also all the Chinese people are speaking English. And it just doesn't make any sense with that. And then it's well, it's as you said, that's what you get when you have a phenomenal Italian, a great Italian filmmaker making a movie in the Hollywood studio system and
about China,
about China
with Peter O'Toole there,
right.
Yeah.
And which is like you said, just kind of very interesting about it, whether you like that or not, or you can just kind of artistic, whatever, all right, Americans need to know what people are saying. They don't want to read the subtitles, so let's not make it as authentic as possible. Let's just kind of tell the story in a different kind of way. I was fascinated because not in the beginning, but later on when Pu Yi became an adult, seeing this actor Joan Lone, I'm like, who is this guy? I know his face. It's because he's Ricky Tan in Rush Hour 2.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, he's the bad guy in Rush Hour 2.
Nice.
I find it kind of fascinating and a look of this royalty becoming where they're changing systems. So he's royalty and they have this kid having so much power. I thought the whole movie was going to be about this kid ruling, and it's because it has the posters him as a kid, and so I thought it was the kid is so important. What kind of policies would a kid pass and stuff like that, and it just was nothing like that. And then it is his brother at one point comes, he's like, you're not the real emperor and stuff, and then he's like, yeah, I am, and it's just they're gonna fight, and then it's and then the it's kind of the brother's a little bit right there where it's he is, but also things are changing, and what kind of when you're a kid like that, what kind of decisions come about that you have to wrestle with, the idea of what to do with all that power as a young person, and how much of your life has been stolen because you were essentially taken from your mom and put in this position and given so much power,
Yeah.
that people like place all of this, like, I don't want to say like, crazy, because it's like just like a almost like a religious rule kind of a thing where they're like, this is the person. It's kind of like with like, Buddha, where it's like,
Yeah.
this is the person that's going to take over like spiritually or something like that. It's like, uh, I don't know. It's just like, and then it goes into like a whole other thing about like, communism and, politics and, whether he's a traitor for what he did, because he also wanted to make things better. And
Hmm.
like, like things are not good. So I actually want to start, when you talked about like, I just started watching the news when I entered high school, and it feels like he had a moment there where he meets Peter O'Toole's character, and he's like, now I want to start paying attention and learning about America and learning about other
Yeah.
countries and trying to figure out like China's place in the world, and how we can make things better. And then people are like, we just wanted you to have the symbolic power. We don't want you to
Right.
actually have real power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that whole idea, and what's a figurehead versus who holds the real power, and do those people who hold the real power not actually want things to change? They just want things to stay the same, and kind of like wipe the minds of the citizens and say, everything is fine, this is the way things are, just look at that little baby, uh, you know king, emperor, whatever.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I think that's why it's so cool that it starts with him at such a young age, because the whole time you think of this poor sweet baby who was thrown into things too soon. It's the opposite of hope and glory. It's not the idea of,
yeah,
you're so innocent to what's going on in the world around you because you're so young. Here he's very closed off from the world around him because he's so young, and because he's literally in this, almost feels like a fortress that's like secluded and locked away, and he's not allowed to branch out from the gates. But it's also the idea of him having to grow up too fast because he has this very heavy position of power at such a young age. And I think that's what makes it so interesting when he does start to like actually, like you said, like open his eyes to the real issues going on.
mhm,
Because also like it brings up that conversation of like, why do people want power? Why do people thrive for power? Do they want power so they can actually do good with it, so they can do bad with it, or do they just want the figurehead? Do they just want to say they were? Do they want that like ego thing? And I think there's a lot to talk about with our current presidency in that.
mhm.
Like how much of it is just for the showmanship of it and to say you did it and to just be the most popular guy in the world, and how much of it is actually wanting to better this place, and like how much of the policies are your own policies or the policies that other people want and impose upon you. I think this film just brings up so much interesting stuff about that. I just think the Chinese government stuff is something that's so, for me, foreign. Like I don't think I learned a lot about this in
Yeah,
school, which is why it's so enlightening and so inspiring and so interesting and so just thought provoking, inspiring, both good and bad. But I do think it's just one of those stories that is just, it is kind of your biopic that goes through the beats, and I usually don't like movies like that, but I think also just the way it's presented. I mean, just the authenticity of the settings and the the spectacle of it, while also still being this guy kind of confined to this space. It really creates a cool dichotomy because it's this wide open space, but he's this one guy in this one singular space, and at the beginning he's quite literally like 2 feet tall. And I think that's kind of what makes it so powerful too, is you see just how big his own world is right now, but how much bigger the world is outside of those walls
yeah,
is even bigger, and it's crazy to think about considering where he came from. And I love the parts where he even feels like a stranger in his own home because times are changing so fast and he's struggling to keep up with the times. And I just think it's a very interesting study on politics, and just using this one guy as a figurehead to kind of navigate that is just so
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like getting into like inception of like the power of an idea, where it's like this kid, kind of like we also talked about Room. It's like this is all he knows is this thing, this all this power that he has, and
This is
you know
very Room. You're so
yeah,
right. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's good, good, good.
drink the green ink kind of a deal, like but doesn't think of like the consequences of that, I guess. But just like the idea of I don't know, like part of me just like really liked thinking about this, what this kid would do and how he would grow to be a great emperor. But then it takes the turn, and I like how it has like the, like you're talking about, like the colors and stuff of the kingdom or the Manchuria, versus when he's like a prisoner, it's like all like,
Muted, dark
yeah,
colors. Yeah, yeah,
and it's like that feels like a choice, like a and a deliberate choice. Um,
yeah.
and it's almost like, kind of like want to pine back for those glory days of having that power and being special and stuff, rather than now you have people screaming in your face being a traitor and stuff like that. And then he does end up going back at some point and just kind of sees, and it's like the time where Jacob Tremblay goes back to see
Yeah.
where he was held prisoner, basically, even though I would say one is, more like you were just kept in this little box, and another is just a very different form of child abuse where it's like you have all this power, but like you really don't have power. Like
No.
the moment you start questioning things, people are going to go, wait a second, he's actually, we didn't want you to do all that. We just want you to stay in your lane
Yeah.
and stay in this zone, in this box.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is it's kind of like, and I don't want to spoil another movie, especially because we're covering it later this month on Framewreck, but The Village. I mean, it's the idea of like, and when you're talking about stylistically, like the idea that like this whole
Yeah.
movie set, you honestly think it takes place way earlier in time than it does because it's so ancient, it's so
Yes.
ingrained with history and culture, and then the second he's out of it, and like you get those darker colors and the darker hues as you were talking about, like the different lighting, it's almost like it feels like it time traveled, but it didn't. It's like this is the world actually happening, but you're stuck inside these walls where everything is so classic, everything's so ancient looking, everything's so dated back to history. And this whole film takes place long ago, but you would think this took place centuries ago, but it didn't. It takes place in real time with the stuff that happens later in the film. It's only a matter of a few decades. So I think it's really cool that we're able to get that stark contrast to be like, whoa, he really was so enclosed. He really didn't see the light for so long. But what he was seeing was still so beautiful too. So it's almost kind of hard for him to say goodbye to it too, because it is this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And I love that it is kind of this area you can like visit now, this Forbidden City. It's not as functioning, I don't think. I think it's more of like a tourist destination. But, I'm glad we still have these things that still live on through history, even if they're not in use, but just to exist, to marvel at, because it is so beautiful to see, and it kind of makes you wish for the aesthetics of old, but the politics of new, and it's kind of that whole battle between old versus new, and the struggle of having to let something so beautiful go, when in actuality what was so beautiful wasn't really working, wasn't really what it meant to be, or what it should have been thematically. Like, yes, it's beautiful, but what was actually going on with the politics and the governing was not as progressive, not as helpful as where it
Yeah.
would be. But then this world that we have now, it's a better world, it's better politics, but now it's like lost its color, and I think there's something kind of bittersweet about that, that whole
Yeah.
journey.
It's like you can make a ballroom, you can turn everything gold, but then at the expense of what? At the expense of making everybody else's lives miserable, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
what I'm referring to. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that's what's interesting about the movie, and I also think like that's kind of like the thing about like when you look at like the content of a movie and you look beyond the wait, why are all the Chinese people speaking English in China? It
Okay.
just like doesn't make much sense. Like where they probably wouldn't be speaking a
No.
foreign language to them when they're there. I mean, unless they're just trying to learn it or something. Like you could see like maybe he speaks English when Peter O'Toole comes in because he speaks English and he's
Yeah.
trying to learn and stuff like
And
that.
again, the movie's not 4 hours, so you could have probably spent an hour with Peter O'Toole teaching him English, but like, do you really want to go through the tedious stuff to get there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess that's the choice of not having to do that and making it more
Yeah.
brief. But honestly, I liked those. Some of my favorite scenes were the scenes of them too, related
Yeah.
like the young Puyi actor, that like the teenage Puyi actor, relating to Peter O'Toole's character, and like what about America, kind of a deal, and just like learning about like the world. I was just talking to Elliot because I was watching broadcast news, and I was like just trying to find out like when I couldn't watch broadcast news because like I knew there was going to be like a sexy scene coming up, and I was
Mhm.
like, when do I have to like fast forward really quick, and then go back and rewatch that scene. but like it was funny because Elliot's starting to ask questions now about like movies and books we're reading and stuff like that. And he's just like, what are they talking about? And I'm just like, they're talking about the news. Okay, here's what news is. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like, there's a world. It's kind of relates to Room and all these things. It's like Elliot's scope is so small. Like he knows different rooms, and then it's like but the world is huge, and it's just like
Mm.
they're talking about things that are happening out in the world, and you got to like kind of relate that, and it's almost like Puyi's eyes opening up. Like one day Elliot's going to start engaging with me in politics, and he's going to realize just how not smart I actually am, and he's going to be like, "Wait, I'm way smarter than Daddy is," and I'll be like, "Yeah." Well, I'm sorry, kid, but I'm
Yeah.
glad you're advancing. Okay,
Yeah.
just don't think about it too hard.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I love that perspective though. Yeah, and that's why I love that we chronicle him from kid to adult, because a lot of films will do that, and it just feels like you're doing that to just tell the thorough life story, and you don't really
Yeah,
have anything to say about him being a kid. Like, okay, Elvis, it makes sense because that's when he learns how to dance, is when he's a kid and watching all the black musicians dance and stuff. But like, not, it doesn't always start with childhood, and sometimes it does, but I feel like this one really uses the childhood to adult kind of timeline as a real function. I do want to touch on, because I don't think this movie is perfect because of what you said. Like the dubbing is really distracting at times,
yeah.
and I get like you probably aren't going to find a kid that old who can speak English thoroughly and give the authentic casting representation you want. But that's what I kind of appreciate, is that Bernardo Bertolucci wanted to keep it as authentic as it could with the locations and the actors he chose. It's just they did have to kind of cut corners and make it more Americanized for the sake of the studio system too, which is kind of the one thing that makes it a little less strips away some of the authenticity, because it's like, oh, because you want to produce this in the American system and you want it to win Oscars and you want it to be nominated for a lot, you're gonna set it in English. But again, it works, and it kind of is just kind of what that kind of movie is at the time. So I can't harp on it too much, but ultimately, I do think, yeah, it's just such a beautiful production, that even though I even think, like, in terms of scenes, like, there are more scenes in other movies that I think stick out more, but overall, like, this is just such an epic film. It kind of reminds me of Lawrence Arabia in that sense, where, like, I can't always pick certain moments out of Lawrence Arabia off the top of my head, but I can remember the experience as a whole, the vibes and just the
Yeah.
colors and the tones, and I feel like that's what The Last Emperor is. Like, I could turn it off and with the sound and just look at the visuals and still love it. But I can't, because the David Byrne score is so freaking good too. It's David Byrne basically just experimenting with these other, like, musical instruments, these Asian instruments, and I want to give credit to Ryuichi Sakamoto and Kong Su as well, kind of being the ones who actually have the experience with the Asian music, and then using David Byrne's kind of more whimsical, kind of like ethereal qualities to kind of create something just very unique. And I think the score is just so freaking beautiful.
Oh
It's my
yeah.
favorite of the year for sure. But yeah, like
What
there's so many elements I really love about it. It's
What
really good.
about just because we haven't really touched on
Yeah,
the whole uh his wives
yeah,
and
that's another point too. Yeah,
stuff like that, because it's not just like they're there and like how does that make him feel. It's like they actually start to be, or at least the one starts to become like a character where she dances with another man, and then she's like normal families in the West, like the normal people only have one wife, and stuff, and it's just like I think that starts to like break out and
hmm
stuff. I found that to be kind of like an interesting addition, where it's
oh,
like
absolutely.
it's not even really about him anymore at one point, where it's like about them.
Right.
Um,
I think if anything, he's a figure for something a lot bigger and just the cultural change. And I love that. Yeah, that you give these
yeah,
women perspectives, because also it's important that, like, this is such a male dominated, kind of like broadcast news, a very male dominated field that a woman is now breaking through. In this sense, it's a very male dominated religion and culture and lifestyle that women are now able to kind of take some independence from. And I think that's really nice. And I think most people will be like, well, but he's your husband. You're going to leave your husband for this other guy. But it's not. Like, you're sharing this guy. Like, it's very polygamous. And some people are all about polygamy, and that's fine, but it's one of those things where, if that's not what you want to do, you should have the
yeah,
choice on whether to be monogamous or polygamous, and not just say, because your culture is this way and because we're supposed to have lots of wives, he just has to, and I like the idea that it challenges that. Again, making it feel more modern in a guise that's much more classical, which I think is really good. And I think the two women who play his wives, and one of them is Joan Chen from Dee Dee, who plays the grandmother in Dee Dee, and then or the mother. Is it the mother or the grandmother? I think the mother in Dee Dee. Yeah, the mother.
That's so crazy. That's
Yeah.
cool.
And then I forget the actress who plays his other wife. I think it might be. I'll have to come back on you on that. I think it might be Maggie Han, maybe. I don't know, but so many names, so many faces, so many character names, because there are so many characters in this. But I'll find that out for you in a sec. But Chet, continue if you have any more thoughts.
Oh, I just had I had one quote that I thought was rather good.
Vivian Wu is the other one. Sorry, Vivian Wu is the other actress.
I had a quote that I thought was rather good. Not good in morality, but good in like clever. Is many heads have been chopped off. It does stop them thinking, which I guess also, like goes into the themes of the movie. Like we don't want some of these people who have real power to think.
Yeah,
maybe they'll start changing things. But
yeah. Chad, do you have any thoughts on the David Byrne score before I recap what this film won, including its score?
Honestly, I can't really remember a lot of the big parts of the score. I remember it being good, but other than that, I mean, I love David Byrne, but I couldn't really pick out like specific like moments in the score that I thought were particularly fantastic. Although I love, one of my favorite things is when an artist, experiments with different instrumentation and, tries to elevate, multi-instrumentalist, stuff. So great.
Yeah. Nice. Well, this film did win 9 of its 9 nominations, including Best Original Score for David Byrne, as well as Best Picture, Director for Bernardo Bertolucci, Adapted Screenplay. I said Original Score, but I'm also going to shout out the other two for David Byrne. And of course, Ryuichi Sakamoto and Kong Su. I want to give credit to all three of them, but it's just so cool. I'm like, David Byrne has an Oscar. Best Sound, Best Art Direction, Cinematography, Costume Design, and Film Editing. This film opens with the shots of the gorgeous sun, and now we must go to the moon. Let's go to Moonstruck. When the moon hits your eye, that's a big pizza pie. That's Moonstruck.
Amore.
Chad, tell us. That's Amore. That's Moonstruck. Chad, tell us about Moonstruck.
But we're finally talking about it. Moonstruck. Directed by Norman Jewison, written by John Patrick Shanley, cinematography by David Watkin, music by Dick Hyman, starring Cher, Nicolas Cage, Olympia Dukakis, Vincent Gardenia, Danny Aiello, Julie Bovasso, Louis Gus, John Mahoney, Fyodor Chaliapin, Anita Gillette, Leonardo Samino, and Paula Truman. Synopsis: an Italian-American woman searches for love after the death of her husband, but when she attempts to remarry, she falls in love with her fiance's brother. And one more thing. I lost my hand!
A very good Cage impression there. Moonstruck, yeah. It's funny because everyone goes, oh, the Italian film in the slate. And the Italian film in the slate is The Last Emperor. But this is the Canadian film in the slate about Italian-Americans. I just think that's a funny tidbit. It's like, this isn't actually the one directed by an Italian filmmaker, believe it or not. But it's not about Italian, like Italy Italians. It's about Italian-Americans. And I think, obviously, personally speaking, this is a film that just, like, speaks so close to home. Not in any of its, like, character dilemmas or decisions, but just in the way the characters talk, the way the characters act, the way they... I'm doing it right now, like, with their hands, the certain phrases they say, the way they kind of shorten certain words to cut it off early. Like, it feels like a great representation of the culture. I obviously, these characters make some very questionable decisions, which is kind of like the fatal attraction of it all, but not to that extreme, obviously. But it is a story about cheating, essentially, in some ways, or is it? I think it's a little bit more debatable, but ultimately, just the way this family connects, the way they talk, the way they engage, the way they sit around the table, the way they eat. It's very reminiscent of stuff that's very close to home, and just being in New York and going to the opera and like seeing all these things that like I see so much in my daily life. It's always nice revisiting Moonstruck. I mean, this is my Aunt Rochelle's favorite movie. It makes a lot of sense. She owns a sauce company. It makes a lot of sense, so this is just like one of those movies that just like it means a lot, but I'm interested to hear like your perspective of this, because I know it's, I don't want to say a little biased, because obviously, again, like I said, some of these characters make some bad decisions, but I want to hear an outsider's perspective, because maybe you aren't as ingrained in like the gabagol culture. So, Chad, what do you think of Moonstruck?
No, I don't call it gravy. I call it sauce.
Hmm.
I
I
guess
call
you
it sauce too. I call it
call
sauce
it
too.
sauce. But no, yeah, I'm definitely not in that culture. I'm not Italian. My wife is some part Italian.
Mm.
I don't think it's half Italian, but she's my father-in-law is Italian too. We went to Italy. That was a great experience.
Yes.
Um, and I never lived in New York. I don't have family that do the gabagoo or anything like that. But gabagool. But I love this movie. I think this movie is incredible. I think, like as I kind of alluded to in the beginning, I love how this movie is just like a great romantic comedy. It has some overacting from Nick Cage, but like also like this is one of, if not his best performance. And I just love all of the dynamics between them. Like you have her dad who is having an affair, the mom who doesn't have an affair, but she has like a very fascinating conversation with the speaking. We've already brought up Say Anything, the dad from Say Anything,
Yeah.
um, and you have the brother or the his Nick Cage's brother, who is her fiance, that goes back to Italy, and that's a whole thing with the mom who's dying, and she doesn't really seem to care, and Cher doesn't even seem to care really. She's just kind of like, I don't like that woman, kind of a deal.
Hmm.
And then she miraculously comes back. You'll never believe it. She's
Yeah.
she's back and she's making food for everyone. And so I think this movie's so funny. I love all the characters. I love the how like authentic, not to like Italy, like you said, but like New York, Italy. I love that
Yeah.
you kind of put the stamp on it. Like, I think this is pretty authentic, because you see yourself and your family and stuff a lot in it. Um, not in what people do, but like how they are and stuff a lot of the times. And I love, yeah, like how this is like Italian Americans are people too. They can go through these things like this. The affairs and stuff like that happen in the movie. And I love. One of my favorite parts is just Nick Cage in the movie. To me, he makes the movie because
Yeah.
I love how weird of a character he is. Like he just shows up and it's just like working in a bread a bread building where they're making bread, and it's just like he's in there talking about how he lost his hand, and you're just like, I just Nick Cage always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
It's because like he's so silly, and I love how they had to like. I think Cher was the one who made sure that Nick Cage got the part because like they
Really.
weren't going to give him the part,
Hmm.
and then like because he's in the movie, I think he elevates it to another level
Yeah.
where it's just like he's not afraid to he doesn't want to pigeonhole. He's not afraid to be weird and just be like, I lost my hand, I lost my bride, and then just talk about his how he lost his hand. Like his brother distracted him, and then he got it like chopped up, and then
Yeah.
his bride left him, and it's just like the worst thing that happened. And
Yeah.
Shane's just like, it's kind of your fault. Like what? And then she starts to fall in love with him, and I'm like, this is great. I love this whole thing because I guess you could tell like she didn't really connect with the
Danny
what's
Aiello's character.
Danny
Yeah.
Aiello, and like she's just kind of doing it because that's what she thinks she's supposed to do, and then she falls for this guy who is like a weird kind of like just works in a bread shop, but then he seems kind of like not like a fancy guy, but then he's like, but I love opera. And then it's just like, and then he takes her to the opera, and he can be fancy, and he's just really like just the way he says things, where he's just like, uh, I'm gonna take you to my bed now. And it's like, it's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. I
It
just love watching this movie
it's a
because
performance
of
that I don't think would work in a lot of movies, but somehow works in this movie. I think like
yes,
it's
yes,
odd how it works in here, because like he makes the movie to you. Like I'll tell you who makes the movie for me, but I do think like Yeah, like I could see people saying this is a bad performance. I could see people saying this is a good performance, and they're both right. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what Nicolas Cage is. You know, it's Face Off. It's like he's the best and worst part of that movie. You know, so yeah.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
cracked Chad up. Sorry, Chad's just laughing his
Just
ass
thinking
off here.
about Nick Cage. I'm thinking about you talking about Nick Cage, and just like I don't know. He brings me so much joy, just because
Yeah.
like you have an actor who I don't know. I mean, he's just weird, just a weird person in real life. I feel like, and he's just like not afraid to, and that's not a bad thing because he's not afraid to do like go that extra mile, be an overactor, but that not be a detractor from the performance or from the movie. And I love this love story. I love how she's a widow, and then she's trying to find love again, and then she tries to go the traditional route, and then she ends up uh, falling in love with this kind of weird guy, but interesting guy too. And
Mm-hmm.
and then she acts on that,
Yeah.
and then I love how you have not just her, but you have all these other little side stories about her
Yeah.
parents who are going
Mm-hmm.
through something. Her
Yeah.
dad's cheating. Her mom is like, why are all men all like kind of slimy and like looking for something else?
Just
Like, why
chasing
can't they just
women. Yeah.
chasing women? Why can't they just know that what they have right in front of them is the best thing, and they gotta go try to find something else? Like, what is that about it? And it's like because they fear death. And I love how like that's kind of like the question is about what people want in life, and shoot the traditional route versus the you know it's not an erotic thriller, but like the erotic, like the steamy, I'm gonna go with the bread hand kind of guy,
Yeah.
and stuff. But he's not just that. He's like so much more, and feels so much more right for her. He seems like he really loves her and stuff. And then you have like the whole idea of like the Moonstruck, and the music, and just all the kind of aesthetic of that, and like the characters who just talking about the different. I can't remember all of the little like stories they're talking about, but it's
Yeah.
what is it? Who's is like that's Cosmo's moon? Is that it, Cosmo?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Cosmo. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
he's like, that's Cosmo's moon. It's like the specific moon, and it's like under
Mm-hmm.
the moonlight, people fall in love, and stuff like that. And I don't know. This movie's just kind of magical in that way. I feel like it's.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree. Like, it's tough because, like, again, I don't love the idea of like because Danny Aiello doesn't give you any reason to not like him, which makes it tougher
Yeah.
that she does cheat on him. But it is kind of that thing. It's like magical in the sense that like you still understand the Cher and Nicolas Cage thing, you still root for it. To when Danny Aiello is like, we can't get married. It's
Yeah.
playing for comedy beat, but it's also kind of relieving to the audience of like, okay, phew, like he's
Good.
also
Okay.
not hurt by this, you know.
Yeah.
But kind of what makes the movie for me is Olympia Dukakis because it's like she's the
Yes.
only one who I feel like has actual emotional, like is almost emotionally hurt by it. Like Danny Aiello is not really bothered when she's with the brother at the end. The brother is annoyed at Danny Aiello, but ultimately gets Cher. Cher ends up with the guy she wants. Vincent Gardenia's character is great, but or his performance is great, but the character cheats on his wife and even gets like a little scolding at the end. But she's the one who's actually going through, I think, a lot of the inner turmoil, and I think it's really great to see because she goes on this kind of date, but it's not really a date. It's more so just wanting companionship because ultimately that's what this movie is. It's about
Yeah.
trying to seek companionship because you can seek a marriage, but a marriage isn't always a companionship, and that's the thing is like Cher realizes this is a marriage with Danny Aiello, but this is a true companionship. I actually find something I have in common with Nicolas Cage. I find a joy of being around him. I don't find that with the other guy, and I think that's the same thing here where she realizes she's like, I just want someone to talk to. I just want someone to enjoy my life with and enjoy conversation with. And when John Mahoney's character kind of talks to her in the restaurant, that's she's finally getting that emotional stimulation that she hasn't gotten before. But then when he walks her home, she's still not going to cheat on her husband because that's who she is. And yes, there may be a little emotional cheating in that moment, in that night of just enjoying this conversation with this other guy, slightly feeling a little guilty about it. But she doesn't let him kiss her goodnight. She doesn't bring him in. She kind of stands her ground and says like, no, like this, I'm married and I know who I
He's
am.
so intelligent.
Yeah,
And
and that's the thing. She's so intelligent, and it
yeah.
makes you kind of like it frustrates you when like the husband makes the decision she makes, and even when Cher makes the decision she makes of cheating, because like she wouldn't do that. The mother wouldn't do that. But at the end, you still it's that magic, like you were saying. It's like whatever under the moon. Everyone falls in love under the moon. It all kind of still wraps up really tidily and nicely. And I like how at the end she doesn't kick the guy out. She doesn't break up with him. She doesn't say you hurt me, you ruined me. But she kind of just says like, don't do it again. Because I know I'm smart. I know what's going on, and don't do it again. And I think that's, again, it's just sort of a very unconventional way to play out a story that we've seen so many times, where the husband's cheating on the wife. It's the Love Actually thing with Emma Thompson and Alan Rickman. It's like, how many times is this story going to play out this way? And I think it's very unconventional in how this one kind of climaxes. It's like kind of confronting him about it in a very interesting way, and then him banging on the table too.
Yes, yeah, because like she kind of knew about it. It feels like it's like, why am I always doing this? Like, I just don't understand.
And like, the person she asks is Danny Aiello, who's the other person who's kind of being walked over in this film, and he doesn't even know.
Yeah, exactly. And then she has a conversation about it, and then later on, you just see just how hurt she is by it. Because in that last scene, she just shows so much like pain. Like, why are you doing this to me? And it's not like an anger. It's like I just don't understand, like confusion and sadness by it, because you could tell that she just loves this guy. It's not like they're stuck in this, sad marriage where no one's happy. She's just like, and let me ask you, what is the Italian is like a good insult, like putz? Is that?
Yeah, or peacock boots. Yeah.
Why are you being that when you could
putz? Yeah.
Realize you should be you should love like what you have, like appreciate what you have.
And it's telling that she doesn't ask like, am I not attractive anymore? Did I do something? It's, am I a good wife? Which kind of it like hurts, because it's like, have I been a good wife? Because she has, and that's the thing, is it's almost, she has this own self-doubt of like, what did I do? Am I a bad wife? Like, because in her eyes, it's like, you only cheat on someone if they're a bad wife, like, and that's the problem too, is like, Danny Aiello was never a bad fiance. It just wasn't, there was no passion there. There was just nothing physically attractive to her about him. Like, she just didn't really have a lot in common with him, but he didn't do anything wrong. And I think that's what's so hard, is like, like these characters aren't doing something wrong, but ultimately some people will still go a different way, and it sucks. And again, like, I would never do what they do, but it makes sense in these characters' lives how this plays out. And I do love that final scene at the dinner table. I think it comes together a little too nicely at times, but like him being like, oh, she woke up, which means I can't marry you. It's like, oh, how convenient. But again, like, that's kind of what it is with this Italian culture. It's like that idea of the magic and the luck and the Moonstruck, and like, there's a little bit of that element to it too. Like, everything does kind of end up perfect in the end. Like, everything's kind of fine. Everything's fine. It's amore. That's it. That's love.
Yeah. Sometimes you can just have a beautiful story that wraps up, and I mean, there's complexities throughout, even though it wraps up nicely at the end, and it's he shows up and. He also doesn't want to get married, kind of a deal, for very different reasons, stuff to do with his mom. And if we get married, my mom's going to get sick again. It's like that, weird, like, what? Like superstition. Just, you don't need every movie to subvert every trope. And sometimes you have to have movies that play into things. And that's what makes them such a joy to watch. And this one I just love watching so much, because it has that, authenticity to, specific culture in New York, and people can see, like, you can see themselves in the movie. And for like an outsider like me, I can enjoy watching what makes that culture so special. And
it's not a mockery, which is good, because I think a lot of people could see this and like start making fun, but I think it is still tasteful. It still treats these people as human,
Yeah, it does. And I mean, very much so. And you can see what makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
The food and the romance and just everything in it. And the fact Cher is Italian, right?
I believe so. I would hope so.
You have a lot of these actors are like Italian American actors. So honestly, I just love watching this movie. She's not.
I don't know. Her father was an Armenian American truck driver. Her mother was Irish, English, German, and Cherokee. So she's actually not Italian, but
Wow.
she plays it
Okay.
really well. She
She
plays it
does.
really plays it off really well.
She fooled us.
Yeah.
But
Um.
she's great regardless. And
Yeah. And I want to say Olympia Dukakis is also not Italian. She's Greek. Yeah, I figured that based on her name.
wow. Okay.
Dukakis.
Wow.
Olympia Dukakis is a very Greek name, but I'll tell you though, Nicolas Cage, Vincent Gardenia, and Danny Aiello very much are. So
Oh yeah.
they give that flavor. But that's also a testament to the acting. I mean, they win the two acting performances because they're very convincing as these characters. And again, like I said, I don't love the decision to cheat, but Cher makes the character so lovable and relatable
Yeah.
despite that. And I'm going to disagree a little bit with what you said. I don't think it's a conventional ending, though. I think it does still subvert some things because I think the conventional ending would have been her being like, I love your brother, you know, but instead it's him breaking it off first and then her being like, great, we can get married. And it's kind of just like, oh, what? Okay. It's almost like everyone being so good about it and so tidy is the unconventional of it because you would expect her to confront her fiance and say, I love your brother. You would expect Olympia Dukakis to have more of a stern, harsh response to Vincent Gardenia. But it's the fact that it's so light that it is subverting because it's not. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like it's
Yeah.
because it's tidying it up so well and it's so nice and clean. That's what is subverting about it because you'd expect it to be a lot messier, considering the whole movie has been a lot messier.
Yeah.
So
And
I think it's cool. Yeah,
it's just such a brilliant scene because you have so much going on
yeah,
with him, Nick Cage meeting the parents, but then you have that whole thing with her dad and like the elephant in the room, and they confront that there with them in the room too, and just all that stuff happening. And then Danny Aiello rushes in and has to say like, my mom, I don't want her to die, so we can't be
yeah,
together. It's everything coming to a close at the end. It's just such a brilliant scene,
yeah,
either way, if it's conventional or not. And it
yeah,
just I love it. I just love this
yeah.
movie. It's just
Yeah, it's
such a
great.
fun movie to watch.
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I get so excited just for every Nick Cage scene.
Yeah, and I'll give credit to
So
Norman
good.
Jewison, who is I believe Canadian, not at all Italian, but is still able to like kind of channel this really interesting perspective and lifestyle. He's also the director of Fiddler on the Roof, which we'll get to, which is a very focus
Nice.
on Jewish experience. He's not Jewish, he's not Italian, yet he kind of is able to still capture the spirit of what this family and this culture is, which is really impressive. It's just really impressive how he's able to kind of understand these walks of life, having not even lived it himself. And I know he didn't write the screenplay. That's John Patrick Shanley, who I also love, one of my favorite screenwriters. But like, they really understand this culture so well, and it really shows that they put the care in to kind of master the way these people talk and interact, and because this is very authentic, and I think that's why, even though it's not directly comparable to my life, like I could definitely find bits and pieces of my family just in these characters and the way they act,
Yeah.
the way they talk, the way they speak, the way they gesture, stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's great. I don't really have much else to say on Moonstruck. It's just I love it as well. Yeah, so Moonstruck, 6 nominations, wins 3. So this is the only other winner of the slate that wins some stuff, and it wins some big stuff. So actress for Cher, it wins Best Supporting Actress for Olympia Dukakis, Best Original Screenplay, and then it's nominated for Best Picture, Director for Norman Jewison, and Best Supporting Actor for Vincent Gardenia. So Chad, that discussion didn't make it any easier for my 2 and 3. So I'm gonna stick with what I originally wrote, and we're gonna roll with that. But I have my ranking ready to go. I'm excited to find out what you have at the top. What is gonna be though your number 5 of the slate, Chad?
This is still tough. I'm still trying to figure out my 3, 4, and 5. I'm gonna go Hope and Glory for number 5.
All right, that is also my number 5. So Chad, continue along with your number 4.
You know what? I'm actually moving something up that I had at 5. I'm gonna move it to 3. So I'm gonna go with my number 4 being The Last Emperor.
All right, my number 4 is going to be Fatal Attraction.
Okay.
So Chad, what is going to be your number 3?
My number 3 is Fatal Attraction.
All right, and my number 3 is The Last Emperor. So we got the same top 2. Got the same top 2. This is going to be interesting. What is your number 2, Chad?
I still don't know. This is so tough because my 1 and 2 I love kind of like equally for different
one of them's
reasons.
going to win regardless. So if we tie, it'll be a coin flip. If it goes one way, it goes the other.
I think if either of these won, it would be fantastic. So I think that's the way I should frame it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is so tough. You know what? I'm gonna take a stab at what I think your number one is, and I'm gonna put Moonstruck at number 2, which
My
is
number 2 is also Moonstruck. My number 2 is also Moonstruck,
wow.
which means we have the same number 1.
All
Yeah, it's a
right,
no-brainer to me. It's a
all right.
no-brainer.
Cool.
What's our number 1, Chad? Let's say it.
Broadcast news.
Broadcast news. That's right. Yeah.
That's so interesting because when we were watching this, I was like, "This Moonstruck. This is Dylan. I'm watching Dylan's story right now without with plus the cheating and stuff. That
Yeah.
not Dylan's story, but also Dylan's story. And I'm like, Dylan loves this movie. I know for a fact just watching it that Dylan loves this.
I do.
And
Yeah.
And so I thought that was going to be your number one. But then we were talking about broadcast news. I was like, he's gushing about this movie. He obviously loves broadcast news. Yeah. Then you were like, there's one just that's number one. And then, it's definitely my number one. And then I was just like, still probably Moonstruck. So it's just shocked.
Honestly, I teeter between Last Emperor and Moonstruck 2 and 3. I just think Last Emperor is just a beautiful production.
Okay.
But yeah, our rankings are pretty similar. I mean, we have the same 1, 2, and 5. Our 4s and 3s are swapped around. And originally you had Fatal Attraction lower, I think you said. So
I had Fatal Attraction at 5 because I was like, should this even be a Best Picture? I was so confused. And we were talking about it. I was like, you know what? It is nuanced. It's a genre. And then I was like, I enjoyed the thrills. I enjoyed watching it more than I did Last Emperor and Hope and Glory. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I guess that's saying something. So I moved it up to 3.
Nice.
But yeah, all these movies are good. But, for me, Broadcast News and Moonstruck are the 2 special ones.
Yeah. And it's really cool that, even if you had gone Moonstruck 1, we would have coin flipped regardless, and we would have been happy with either outcome. Because it sounded like those were 1A and 1B for you, more so than 1 and 2.
Yes.
So I'm glad we're happy with the outcome. Same number 1. This rarely happens, especially on this year for our wish list and stuff. But it's also nice that, for my wish list, my favorite film won, so that's always nice to see, but it doesn't always happen that way, so I'm very excited. But yeah, Broadcast News will be our pick. Now we have to get into our acting prizes, and I believe I'm up first for actor. So I'm going to go with, this is tough because there are actually a few really great ones, but the one that I just enjoyed the most, the best performance for me, is actually going to be Albert Brooks from Broadcast News. I just think his character is very layered. I think he gets the comedy beats so well. He plays this type of character just so perfectly well. And I think this was, something... my first experience with him was Marlin and Finding Nemo, and to see just some of these older performances of his are so good because he is a comedian, but he also has a heart of gold, but he's also a little snarky and has a little attitude too. He's just a very layered performer, layered character in this thing. And I just thought it was... my second favorite performance in that movie, which I think is full of some great performances, but my favorite male performance in the movie, I should say. But Chad, what's your best actor choice?
I think it's no secret the one that affected me the most. There's so many great ones, and you definitely picked one. When I was watching through Broadcast News, I was like, I could pick any of these actors. I could pick Brooks or Hurt, and just be so happy because they're so good. I'm gonna go Nick Cage from Moonstruck, just because he's just one of the most unique actors ever, where he takes he can play both. He can be super dramatic. He can be very weird. If you've seen Vampire's Kiss and stuff like that, he can just go really crazy and just make talking about files interesting. But yeah, he plays a character that is just a character I didn't even a person I didn't even know could exist, that is kind of this strange guy who lost his hand, is mad about it, but is just so content with who he is, where he's this lowly bread maker guy, yet he's also can be cultured and love the opera. And he's just I love the opera. It's just the way he delivers his lines and just so unique that just a movie like this, I'm sure just launched his career. Is just that guy, and
And
I
the
just
type of
love
role
how,
he would play too.
yeah, he's always like steered into that kind of thing where he's like, I can be dramatic, but I'm not afraid to launch it if I need to, like
Yeah.
really like emphasize on stuff. And he just makes the movie for me. Even though when I say that, I don't mean like everyone else is not good. Everyone in the movie is
Yeah.
great, except just Nick Cage. Just he's the only one that's doing that thing that no
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
else is doing.
I love it. I love the
It
pick.
makes
Yeah.
him stand out, and for me, I just every time but any Nick Cage movie, every time I just am loving just waiting for Nick Cage to appear and do his thing. And in this movie, he just elevates it just so much for me. So I had to choose Nick Cage.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great pick. As you said, just so many good performances in that movie. I think it's the best ensemble of all these films. But Chad, you got to give us your best actress now. Is it going to be from that film, something else? What are you going to go with?
I I know who I thought you were gonna pick when I was watching a specific movie, um, and I'm interested to see if you go to that because I think I am stealing something from you now from what you've said. I'm picking Holly Hunter.
Yeah, that was my
Um,
number one too. Yeah, but
yeah, because
rightfully so. So good.
and we said that when you said what you said, it also like reinforced like that's the pick. Pick that
Hmm. Yeah.
as number one, just because like yeah, like just everything she does in this movie, she is that like driven character. She's got her code of ethics. She sticks to them, but she can get fiery. She can cry, and she does all of that, to such a high level. Just like when she's yelling, and she's like, "You're the devil," just like really loud. I'm like, "Geez, Holly Hunter, like she's something special in this role, and just really like embodies that like, strong woman character." Like you take like Clarice Starling with Jodie Foster, and that's a brilliant performance in its own, but it's very subtle and like
Hmm.
subdued. Like Holly Hunter, she can go nuts at times too. I guess I like the performances with a lot of range that can be really soft and just like give like a little, but then like start yelling when it calls for it, and just
Right.
shows how like really like you know uh, uh, fiery she can be, but just really like driven. I just love the scenes where she's playing off of like William Hurt, and she's just like feeding him lines, and then he's delivering the lines. I just love like that whole thing. But then you have Albert Brooks, calling in and like feeding her the lines and stuff like that. So it's just a great acting movie, Broadcast News. I'm glad that we got at least two of them in there. Let's see who you pick.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm trying to see. Are we going to cover the piano on the show? Was that Best Picture nominated? I'm not actually sure, but
Yes, it
hopefully we'll get to
was.
talk about her. Okay,
It
hopefully
was.
we'll get to talk about her again because that's the one that you won the Oscar for. So I'm really excited to finally get there. But she's so wonderful, and I'm glad. Another one that I knew from a Pixar movie first. It was Albert Brooks and Holly Hunter. This is Marlin and Mrs. Incredible, but pretty cool. My pick though, and I'm happy I get this one because I think she's just so not underrated because she won the Oscar, but she's so good. Is Olympia Dukakis for
That's who
Moonstruck?
I
She's
thought you
just the
were going
one
to
who
pick.
I just her moments where she's just sitting at the table and clocking what her husband's done and being able to say it and just all the different things. It's just so nuanced, and in a movie where people are very flawed, I feel like she's the one who has the best moral center. And that's not to say that we're not picking the best characters, but I just think her performance is the hardest because of that, because she has to kind of toe that
Yeah.
fine line and not act on these impulses and these desires and stuff. And I think that's harder than acting on it, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Just
obviously, shout out to Cher, she's great. Glenn Close, Ann Archer, so many great women in this slate. Joan Chen, just
100%.
so many great actresses.
And yeah, just like that dinner scene and the walk home, and just yeah, she's brilliant. Like
Yeah.
it was like kind of like a 1-2, and then I thought about Glenn Close, but when Holly Hunter, when I watched Broadcast News, it was just clear. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
picking Holly Hunter. That's
Yeah,
easy.
I
Oh, I get
I think it's
first
the best.
pick. Cool. Holly
Yeah,
Hunter.
yeah, you wouldn't have gotten it had I got a first pick there. But there we have it. We have finally finished 1987. Let's recap really quickly. My best actor is Albert Brooks for Broadcast News. Chad's best actor is Nick Cage for Moonstruck. My best actress is Olympia Dukakis for Moonstruck. And Chad's best actress is Holly Hunter for Broadcast News. And our best film is Broadcast News, which means Broadcast News gets 3, Moonstruck gets 2. Those are clearly our top 2. And I'm glad they got represented here. And then the Oscars gave Cher the Best Actress prize and Last Emperor of the Picture prize. So everyone's getting represented pretty much across the board. And the 2 that aren't, we still said some kind words too. But now we must move on, Chad. Any last thoughts on 87 before we continue on?
Really, really good, light for the most part. Fair, and I really enjoyed it. A lot of LOLs in the slate. And we don't, like you said, we don't get a lot of those because it's often just very heavy. That's what the Oscars are a lot of the times. It's like, is someone depressed or dying? That's a great Best Picture movie. It's like, what if it's just like people being the best they can be, and it's kind of funny. And Joan Cusack is doing like some Charlie Chaplin stuff in the movie. Yeah, that's a great movie. Let's do that one. So.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's great for all the things you said as well. I'm very glad I picked this one because also Moonstruck was the only one I had seen. We usually ask beforehand, but Moonstruck was the only one I had seen before this slate. So it was just great to just kind of get a new favor with Broadcast News and finally watch The Last Emperor, which my dad was like, "Oh, you're doing the Year of Last Emperor? That's awesome!" And then Fatal Attraction, which I've heard so many great things about. So it's just so nice to like feel like. Now I've crossed so many big names off the list, but we're going to cross some more names off the list next time because Chad's wish list is up next. We're taking turns every month. Chad, you're going to take us to a different year, a little bit more of a modern year. We both lived through it, but why don't you tell us what your pick for next month is going to be year-wise, and then tell us what the slate is.
Oh, yeah. I'm very, very excited for this one. There's one movie that I've seen. There's one movie that I've tried to watch and just couldn't really get through. It's kind of like the one where it's like kind of like 1987. It's like the one movie I know I've seen all the way through, and some that I've been trying to watch and just never got through. So I'm really excited to get through all of these and talk about them. because I feel like it's a very interesting slate. We're doing 2004.
Yes.
We were both alive. I was 14 in 2004, and you were a little bit younger than that. But
6.
the movies are The Aviator, Finding Neverland, $1 Million Baby, Ray, and Sideways. And I know $1 Million Baby is one that, like, when I first watched it, I was like, what the hell? And now I have a different perspective on it, so I'm excited to explore that.
Nice. And we do have a guest joining us for 2004. We are so excited to be joined once again by Mr. Matty Fresh. Matt Chapman will be here to talk about these movies with us. One of his favorite actors is amongst his slate. He's also got just great opinions galore, and we wanted to get him on here, so you'll see him there next month. Chad, any last thoughts before we head into 2004, putting away 1987? I think it's been a pretty good year.
Really excited for 2004. I think we are strangely almost done with the 80s entirely, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, we're getting close.
We've done a lot of 80s, which is great, and I'm excited. Some of these slates we're going to start having the last ones of, and that's just kind of interesting as we near. So we're over halfway. We're nearing the end of not this show necessarily, but this version of the show, and just fascinating to kind of close the book on certain things and stuff, especially the slate, which was a very surprisingly interesting one. So check out these movies, especially Broadcast News and Moonstruck. I thought
they're on Criterion. You can pick them up. Chad, where can they find you out there? Anything to plug?
Check out my channel Cinema Chad, and my other channel Welcome to Primetime, which is a lot of horror. And Cinema Chad, we rank stuff over there. Dylan's been on quite a few times, and we have a lot of fun just talking movies and just anything over at those places. You can check out my letterbox and stuff like that as well.
Cool. And you can find me here at the Dill Pickle Movie Network for more Picture This, some maybe a draft or two coming throughout the year, and then of course, A Recipe for Reality, Marvelous Movie Mondays, Frame Wreck, all that stuff. Frame Wreck, we're in the middle of our summer of Shyamalan, so go check that out soon. Our episode for The Village should be dropping somewhat soon after this airs. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode. We will see you next time with 2004. Take care.